Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, the game streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Ian is with us today. Hello, Ian.
What up, what up?
So did you listen to the Rand Club at all, the show that comes on before us?
A little bit. Yeah, I did some, yeah.
I mean, my goodness gracious. I can just tell you this right now. I respect those men. Clearly, they have a good show because I listened to it for 3 hours a day. But I could not disagree more with some of the things that came out of that show. I just can't. And the one thing I'll say is, with the Derek disagreements, the award-winning pregame show will be at 9:30 on Sunday morning, and I guarantee you we will not be breaking down the game on Sunday against the Patriots. So we put out a poll yesterday at the end of the show. This is polling season, right? So we put out a poll at the end of the show yesterday. In fact, I was on the air and kind of multitasking that I didn't even articulate the poll correctly. It was supposed to say, I think, in fact, let me pull that poll up right now just so that I've got it verbatim. But it was supposed to be who would do a better job running the Titans, who would be better as GM of the Titans, Rand Carthon and Chad Brinker or Jared Stillman. And in fact, I put it, would be better as GM of the Titans. So I didn't even get to articulate it right. And I was shocked by the results. Who would be a better GM of the Titans? Rand Carthon and Chad Brinker, 52%. Jared Stillman, 48%. There have been 1,160 votes cast. You still have 3 hours and more and change to get your vote in if you want to be heard. 52 to 48. Again, this is polling season. That's usually within what they call the margin of error. In theory, if that was the country, I could win the Electoral College polling at 48%. And again, it's not a small sample size. We're talking about over 1,000 voters. So who would be better? Them, 52%. The people that actually do it, that are paid millions of dollars to do it. Me, 48%. Now, let's start with the first and most important aspect of our poll. I have no business being a general manager of a football team. Ian, can you agree with me on that one?
What now? I'm sorry?
I have no business being a general manager of a football
That's probably true, yeah.
Okay, so we just get that out there. This is not Jared thinking he can be a GM. But it is a sign of how little faith Titan fans have right now in Rand Carthon and Chad Brinker. And I'm sure there are some people out there that voted, LOL, Stillman for GM. But again, over 500 people. I bet most of you probably think when you do place a vote for me, which I am honored for. I do think there are some people that are like, it can't be worse. And the reality is, I don't think it can be worse. I really don't think it can be worse. You have one win over a team on its third string quarterback. That's it. And you had to win it with your backup quarterback. Because if your starting quarterback had played that whole game, who knows if you would have won? That's how bad the faith around here is. Somebody said in the YouTube chat yesterday when I introduced the poll, they said, Floyd would laugh so hard at the idea of you talking about being a GM. And while I think there's probably some truth to that, I can only imagine how the old man would feel about the actual GM of the Tennessee Titans saying, the ball didn't bounce our way after a 52-14 loss. This also being the second time that he's used that excuse. So the reality is Titans fans have lost faith in this administration, and I can't blame them. Everything they have promised has failed. Everything that they have tried has failed. They keep pressing buttons, and every single button, except drafting J.C. Latham, has almost had an immediate failed return. And by the way, when you draft somebody with the 7th pick, they should be good. But again, think about all the promises that we've had over the last 2 years. Mike and Rand will work together and collaborate. Fail. Peter Skoronsky in the first round. He's the number one plug-and-play player in the draft. Fail. Building an entire organization around Will Levis. He's our good young quarterback, Amy told Mike Keith at the end of last year. Fail. Letting Derrick Henry leave in free agency. By the way, I saw a stat PK had last week against the Bills. I believe this was last week against the Bills. Tony Pollard faced the least amount of stacked boxes. Remember when stacked boxes used to be a thing around here? They helped the quarterback. Fail. Hiring a new coach to take us to the next level. Fail. Spending $230 million in free agency. Fail. Hiring the guru, Bill Callahan, to fix the offensive line and ignoring right tackle because again, other than drafting Latham, fail. Everything they've done for the most part has been bad. And that's how you get 1-6 and 52-14. It's like talking about Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward. Everybody loves it. Well, what do you think about this guy? What do you think about that guy? But do you trust these guys to put Shedeur Sanders or to put Cam Ward in a position to succeed? Now, we don't talk about this all the time, but it actually does matter where these guys go. If Andrew Luck had gone to a good organization, there's a chance he'd be the best quarterback in the NFL today. Instead, he's hosting a book club and a podcast. And when we're talking about how the 2024 Titans compare almost directly, in fact, they're actually worse than the 2014 Titans. You know, the 2014 Titans, the 2-15 Ken Wisenhunt Titans, the worst team they've ever had, the gold standard for terrible. We keep comparing them to 2014. We don't even compare them to 2023 because we know the 2023 Titans, who sat 3-4 through 7 games, were a better football team. And that was a season that got the coach fired, and the fans didn't enjoy that either. Titans fans don't want to doubt their own operation. They want to believe in the GM. They want to believe in the coach. They want to believe in the quarterback. I'm a Titan fan. I want the Titans to be the Chiefs. You want the Titans to be the Chiefs. We want to be optimistic about Sunday. I host the pregame show, the award-winning pregame show. And guess what? I've already told you we're not breaking down the Patriots on Sunday because nobody's interested in the what happens on the field Sunday. So if you're the Titans, everything you've done over the last 2 years, by and large, has been a mistake. Fail. And if you keep doing the same thing over and over and over and over again, you get the same result. 52-14. But it's just a bounce here and a bounce there. They're so close. It's so crazy. It's so crazy that 48% of the people think it would be better if I called the shots. Me. Again, I'm not telling you I should be president of the United States. I'm not telling you I should be GM of an NFL team. I'm not telling you that I should be Emeril Lagasse and hosting a show on the Food Network. But I can't imagine that it'd be worse. I cannot imagine that if I ran the Tennessee Titans, that this team would be worse than 1-6. That this team would have gone to Detroit and lost by more than they lost on Sunday. I just can't believe that. And that should tell you something. And it should tell you something, again, when 48% of the constituents actually think I could do better. Me. Like, what are we talking about? Me. Again, I mean, look, I told you yesterday I had a whole bunch of campaign promises, things I would do, and Things that I think would help us be better if I was running the team, whatever it may be, I don't know. But instead, all you get nowadays are, I think, excuses like the ball didn't bounce their way. The same excuses, by the way, that he used last year. Revisionist history, that it was all Mike Vrabel's fault that they took that crappy guard with the 11th pick. And a blaming of something that happened almost 5 years ago. Well, they took Isaiah Wilson in the first round. Yeah, the Eagles took Jalen Reagor in the first round of the same draft. The Eagles, are they still struggling? I mean, my God, we've only been to the playoffs every year and been to the Super Bowl, but we screwed up because we drafted Jalen. How could we ever recover? But that's what you get around here, because that's all they have. So I'd like to say this. 48% of Titan fans, again, look, they are real football people that are, well, I say that. They don't know football, but they are actually employed by an NFL organization. They are actually employed. So they should be better than me. But it's obvious when it's this close, it's obvious that this fan base does not think they have a clue what they're doing. And this fan base shouldn't have a clue that they know what they're doing. Give them more of a chance. Really? To screw more up? To make us buy tickets to watch games on Sunday that we don't even want to watch ourselves? Give them more of a chance to make it worse? 48% of the people say, let's see if Jared Stillman could do better. And that should tell you something. 615-737-1025 on the phone lines. Jared Stillman, the general manager. It's got a nice ring to it. I will say that. Now, let me say this. If I was general manager, I'd have some explaining to do too, because I wanted to draft Anthony Richardson with the number 1 overall pick in the 2023 draft. And earlier today, the Indianapolis Colts announced that they were going to be benching Anthony Richardson. So, what do you guys say about that now, Jared? We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 1025 The Game.
I was utterly in shock that Anthony Richardson came out of his mouth and said that in the post-game press conference, that you were too tired and had to tap out of a game to catch your breath. Bro, I'm a former offensive lineman. We don't get plays off. We're literally out there to protect you. And for you to tap out in that situation is the most ridiculous thing that I have ever heard. Could you imagine this, Shay? How many times have quarterbacks come into a huddle and talk to not only the linemen, but talk to everyone in the huddle? Guys, just give me your best. On a critical drive, on a critical play, give me your best. How in the world, if you're Anthony Richardson, could you come in that huddle and say something to what I just said when you tapped out of a game? It's really disturbing. And on top of that, you got Joe Flacco as your backup, someone who's been balling. Okay? You don't have the luxury of tapping out in the game when the Indianapolis Colts have a viable backup quarterback that we know at this present time is better than you are.
That was Damian Woody yesterday. Again, the infamous Anthony Richardson tap out of a game. That was bad. That was bad. And today, the Indianapolis Colts announced Joe Flacco will be starting on Sunday Night Football against Minnesota, and that Anthony Richardson's being benched. I can't remember who tweeted it out. One of the insiders said, some people will say this is a benching, and that will be the story that we've given up, but we haven't on Anthony Richardson. Yeah. Okay. Now, in fairness, that tap out, I don't think Richardson gave the Colts much of a choice, because it's hard to look at the guys in the locker room and say, yeah, the quarterback, he got a little tired. What he should have done is he should have lied. He should have gone to the podium and said, yeah, my ankle was all messed up, or my cleat was it's something better than I was tired. Now, if I was general manager, because I always like to first guess and second guess, and Ian, I'd like to say, I don't get any credit for this, and that's okay, but I'd like to say that I'm pretty accountable with my own opinions. Like that I don't do this revisionist history of
sometimes
I never said things that I did in fact say.
I'd say for the most part here, that's probably true, I think.
So before the 2023 draft, I was all in on Anthony Richardson. All in. And I had a very specific plan. I thought he was the guy the Titans should take. And again, the specific plan was draft Anthony Richardson and to run down to the podium. And before, because again, Vrabel was the coach, so Teresa Walker got to ask the first question when Vrabel was the coach. And before Teresa Walker could even open her mouth to ask the first question, I would say Ryan Tannehill is our starting quarterback. And I would have probably had a backup in there that would not have been Anthony Richardson. I would have kept him up because I knew he needed to work. Right now, Anthony Richardson's play in Indianapolis is horrendous. And the stats are hideous. 44.4% completion percentage, 4 touchdowns, 7 picks. His quarterback rating on Sunday was 48.3 versus Houston. And of course, he took himself out of the game because he was tired. Something I've never, ever seen a quarterback do. I've never seen a quarterback do it. And yet his yards per completion are 16.2, which leads the NFL. They lead the NFL in yards per completion, which again hints at the talent that Anthony Richardson has. He's got a massive cannon for an arm, and he can throw the deep ball, and unlike your quarterback, he can complete it. By the way, Will Levis yards per completion, 8.4, almost half of Anthony Richardson. So let me say this off the top. There's a legitimate chance that I would be getting fired if I had been general manager and had gotten my wish to draft Anthony Richardson. A legitimate chance. And I would have made that draft choice knowing that I was taking a risk on the talent, dealing with the inexperience, and that if it didn't work and it blew up in my face the way it's blowing up in Indy's face, that I would be out of a job. And I would have accepted the risk. But here's where I'll defend myself. The day he was drafted, and again, this is my guy. But the day he was drafted, I said, the one hope is Indy screws them up. You know the organization that's notorious for screwing up Andrew Luck? That was the only hope. The organization that hit the lottery 3 times by being able to draft John Elway, Peyton Manning, and Andrew Luck, and they have 1 Super Bowl because of it. And we as a group, not just me, but we as a group have been talking about developing and screwing up quarterbacks forever. Then a quarterback comes into the league and we just assume that he develops into a superstar because he's so awesome, or he fails because he so stinks no matter what. Now, I'm not here to tell you that I think Zach Wilson would have been a superstar if he had gone to a sane organization. But did he ever really have a chance with the Jets? It's like we're aware of the fact that organizations screw up quarterbacks or nurture them into stars. But then when Jaden Daniels comes in and balls out, we just assume it's because Jaden Daniels is the man, period. Not the fact that Washington went and appropriately spent on the offensive line in free agency, that Washington brought in an offensive coach in Cliff Kingsbury to work with the specific skill set of Jaden Daniels. We don't talk about that. It's all about the fact, oh, he just must be good. It's like Mahomes. You think it's an accident that Mahomes, teams in the league were not, the Jets, for instance, had the 6th overall pick. Geno Smith was their quarterback. They took Jamal Adams because they saw the flaws in Mahomes' game. They didn't think Mahomes could be a star. Andy Reid saw the flaws in Mahomes' game and said, I can correct them, but it has to be according to my plan. You think it's an accident or a coincidence that Mahomes went to the best offensive coach, Andy Reid, had the best tight end, Travis Kelce, the best wide receiver, Tyreek Hill, the number 1 overall draft pick at left tackle? You think that's an accident? By the way, Mahomes' right tackle when he started is now Jaden Daniels' right tackle in Washington. Floyd had Vince Young's jersey hanging in his house. In fact, it's still there. Many people would consider Vince Young a bust. If you ask the old man what happened to Vince, because again, he picked him. If you ask the old man what happened to Vince, you know what he says every time? And Ian, I think you remember him saying this too.
Yes, I do.
He used to say, when I was here, he was Rookie of the Year and going to the Pro Bowl. Translation, they screwed him up. Jeff Fisher, Norm Chow, Mike Reinfeldt, Bud Adams, Steve Underwood. Blame them, don't blame me. When I was here, when I was overseeing the program, he was Rookie of the Year and headed to the Pro Bowl. So if I was interviewing for a GM job and they said, what happened with Anthony Richardson? I would say, my plan for Anthony Richardson and their plan for Anthony Richardson were complete and polar opposites. I said, hey, you got to draft Anthony Richardson. You got to sit him on the bench. You got to sit him for a year. You got to put in that offense. You got to let him see how it's done in the pros. You got to get him a tight end. You got to, and Indy didn't do any of that. Indy drafted him and it was, we're going to put him out there and we're going to try to see if he can go out and play right away in the NFL. By the way, I believe in sitting quarterbacks. Number 1, I think it works. Mahomes sat, Brady sat, Rodgers sat. I think it works. But also because I worked with somebody every day who, once again, drafted a quarterback with the 3rd overall pick, took the first quarterback in the draft, and went immediately to the press and said, he's sitting for 2 years in reference to Steve McNair. Because I bet if they stuck Steve McNair out there the same way Indianapolis has put Anthony Richardson out there, Steve McNair would have failed too. Would that have made a difference? I don't know. But I know organizations matter. Coaches matter. Offensive lines in front of the quarterback matter. I texted a former NFL coach during the combine of the 2023 draft, and I said, if I'm Indianapolis, I am bringing Matt Ryan back as the starting quarterback, and I am drafting Richardson, signing Dalton Schultz from the Cowboys, who is now on the Texans, signing Dalton Schultz to play tight end, and we're going to give the ball to Jonathan Taylor 35 times a game. Indianapolis drafted Richardson, said he was going to start right away, didn't get him a tight end, and immediately got into a contract dispute with Taylor, who missed like the first 6 games of Richardson's rookie year. They're calling QB sweeps for him, and they got him hurt twice last year. They've already got him hurt this year. Organizations matter. I know this. 1 year ago today, Will Levis was 19 of 29 for 238 and 4 touchdowns and a win over Atlanta. That same day, Malik Willis got booed off the field. And Malik Willis just won his 3rd game quarterbacking the Packers. Why? Because organizations matter. So yes, I will tell you, I pounded the table for Anthony Richardson. And maybe if I was GM of the football team, I'd be getting fired for that decision. But the one thing I'll say is Indianapolis is as guilty, if not more guilty. As guilty or more guilty for why this hadn't worked out. 615-737-1025. We are to your phones. But if you want to sit there and say, what about Anthony Richardson? I just told you. And by the way, if I was in another front office, let's say I was with the Titans and I wanted Anthony Richardson, but the Colts took him, and so we ended up drafting a guard. Let's say that happened. I'd be going right to everybody in the front office right now. I'd be like, guys, what do you think we should trade for Anthony Richardson? You know, could we call up Indy? Again, it's harder because it's Indy. Could we call up Indy and offer that 5th round pick that we got for DeAndre Hopkins and see if they'd be interested in that? Like, what do we think here? You know, bring in Anthony Richardson next year, sit him on the bench, maybe put in a system for him, because I believe in that talent. 615-737-1025. We're to your phones. Plus, something Rand said that wasn't as inflammatory as the ball didn't bounce our way, but is equally as off-putting, maybe. We'll get to that next. Stillman & Company, 102.5 The Game.
how did you adapt to that and adjust to getting that criticism to make yourself stronger and make you better at your job? And how will you apply that into year 2?
Man, I just ignore the noise. I mean, there's a reason why I'm not on social media, so you don't have to, hear all that. Like, I'm not on social media, but, I have friends and family that are, and they kind of, keep me in the loop. Again, you don't, go out to be in one of these positions and not know that scrutiny is going to come. But to me, the cure-all to it all is winning football games. And that's what my focus is and always will be, is winning football games. And I know that the more we could do that, the better off we'll be. And that's my job. And I know ultimately if I don't do enough of that, then I know this won't be my job. And so I try to stay focused on, the guys in the building hear me talk about it all the time, keep the main thing the main thing. And the main thing is constantly improving this roster and putting us in position to win football games. And so that's always been my focus.
The main thing, we got to improve the roster and be worse. That was Rand Carthon in February at the Combine telling the Midday Show, hey, if I don't win football games, I'm not going to have a job. Well, I mean, since he said that, he hasn't won football games. He's won a football game. Hasn't won any football games. Guys, it's Halloween. It'll be November the next time they play football. That's bad. He told you in February, I'm going to get criticized. Oh, this is all going to be bad. I'm going to get criticized. This is going to be bad. This is going to be, if we don't win any games. They're not winning. It's just, and if you read his interview with the Tennessean, we made a big deal yesterday. I made a big deal about the whole going back to the well of saying that the ball didn't bounce their way, because I thought that was obnoxious. And I think it's incredibly disingenuous. And quite frankly, I think it's offensive to Titan fans to say the ball didn't bounce our way. But as you read through each Q&A, at no point does he ever sit there and say, like, yeah, we messed up. We over-evaluated this. We got this wrong. We have to go back to the drawing board. Doesn't use the word rebuild. Doesn't anything. Just says, stand there with us, fans. We're frustrated too. What? Not like, hey, here's where we got it wrong, and here's where we're going to fix it. It was just stay with us, fans. Just trust us. We got to flip this roster, and you're worse. I keep hearing the Midday Show say, it's all John Robinson's fault because they missed on the 2020 through 2022 drafts. Well, that's how they got the job. But they missed on the 2020 draft last year, too. And they missed on the 21 draft and the 22 draft in 2023. And yet they were a better football team. So why are they worse now? I mean, I didn't at any point hear them say, we're going to have to get worse to get better. They don't say that because they didn't believe that. That wasn't their goal. It's just a fact. And Brian Callahan has admitted that. But now we're moving goalposts and changing narratives. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. James in Clarksville has been waiting very patiently. He's going to kick us off today. James, thank you for calling. Go ahead.
What's going on, man? I don't think Will Levis is hurt, first of all. I think if you've ever seen the movie The Endgame, Will Levis is the Hulk. He's trapped. He's scared to come out. I think he's, and how do we
James, get to it.
Go from the one and not run the ball one.
Okay, thank you for your call. So, I mean, I actually read something on ESPN, where I was, like, I don't know what Benjamin Solak knows, but he was sitting there. There was an article where he was asked something along the lines of, why has Brian Callahan failed so bad in Tennessee? And, everybody now is like a football guru, even though a lot of these guys don't know if it's pumps or stuff. So they're talking about, they run these two high sets and they do, I don't know any of this stuff. But basically, and it was funny because I said the same thing to TD yesterday before the press conference, which was, I think the reason that they threw the ball from shotgun 4 times from the 1 yard line is because Brian Callahan's calling plays like he has Joe Burrow at quarterback. Because if you had 1st and goal at the 1 and Joe Burrow was your quarterback and you had T. Higgins who could go up and get it and you had Jamar Chase, I think we would have been okay with throwing the ball 4 times out of shotgun from the 1-yard line. Probably because with Joe Burrow at quarterback and those guys at receivers, we probably would have had a touchdown with those guys. But the problem is you don't have Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, and Jamar Chase. And I don't know if Brian Callahan is totally out of that mindset yet. And Benjamin Solak wrote something similar at ESPN.com, which is that Brian Callahan's quarterbacks don't fit the scheme that he's trying to run because they're not Joe Burrow. That's a problem. One thing I do think Brian Callahan has that's not going to work here, just because the environment is totally different, is I feel like there's a lot of, well, in Cincinnati, what we did. And I know this. Like, I was on the radio in Louisville, and we were very successful in Louisville. I came here, and I was like, in Louisville, we did some of this, and we did some of that. And, again, the markets aren't all that similar. In fact, I told people, I'm like, when I was in New Hampshire, which is essentially, a suburb of Boston for the most part, Louisville, Kentucky's market on the radio is more like Boston than it is like Nashville because of the way people care about Kentucky and Louisville and how it goes back generations. And you don't have 8 generations of Titan fans around Nashville. Doesn't exist. So it's just a different vibe. But again, you have to treat Nashville radio like it's Nashville radio. You can't treat it like it's Louisville radio. Brian Callahan has to understand the situation. The cards he's dealt right now with the Titans are not the same cards they were dealt in Cincinnati. Cincinnati's owner doesn't fire people left and right. The coach before them was Marvin Lewis, who was there for 38 years and never won a playoff game. This is different. Joe Burrow's not your quarterback, and Joe Burrow is not going to be your quarterback. Again, they took the job. They had the worst team in the NFL. They drafted Joe Burrow. They had the 5th pick in the following draft after Burrow's ACL got torn, and they took Jamar Chase. That will not happen here. Like, Brian Callahan will not get to suck this year, get to use the number 1 pick on a quarterback, and then get to use the number 5 pick the next year. He will be fired before then. They're moving into a new stadium. This ain't Cincinnati. And I think that is something that they need to learn. Like, again, the special teams coach thing, like, well, he learned under the best coach in Cincinnati. Well, that may be the case, but his special teams ain't like Cincinnati's, because I've watched Cincinnati play enough, and I don't ever remember Cincinnati getting two punts blocked, having a problem with the punter's hang time, allowing Khalif Raymond returns. I don't remember that with Cincinnati when he was there. So that's just reality. Telling it how it is. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number. We'll get back into your phones. 615-737-1025. Plus, again, there was something that was said that it sounds good. And the Boo-Hoo Club will tell you that it is good. But the numbers don't add up. We'll get to it next. Stillman and Company on 102.5, 106 The Game.
Just how long-term is that? Is there a concrete time where you expect the vision needs to be executed by then?
No, I think you got to be really careful with timelines because it's not linear. You know what I mean? You're not just constantly doing this. There's dips, and then it doesn't always just go right the way you expect it to go. So you have to be mindful of what you put on it. But I think there's lots of examples around the league of how you can go about that in a relatively quick manner. The team we just played is one of them. Cincinnati was that way, and San Francisco. There's teams that show you that it's there's a relative idea of what you'd like it to look like, and it's those are the things that you try to match it up with and hope that you can do the same thing.
That was Brian Callahan yesterday saying, hey, I don't want to put a timeline on the vision, but look at these other teams. It took them time, and he's not going to say hopefully it'll be the same for us, but that's what he's thinking. And that's okay. Again, I don't know about you guys, but I've taken jobs worried about, hey, man, what happens if I fail? I mean, I've had that feeling before, so it's okay. So Rand Carthon did that talk with the Tennesseans. It was about 5 questions and answers, and Nick Suss was on the morning show, said that everybody was talking to Arden Key on one side of the locker room. He saw Rand on the other side of the locker room. He's like, hey, man, can I get you for a little bit? And got I wouldn't say sit down with Rand, but again, he got Rand on the record, which nobody, I mean, it's like getting tickets to his Taylor Swift concert. Like, congratulations to you. And Rand was asked about the thought process behind the DeAndre Hopkins trade and the Ernest Jones trade, which probably should come as a surprise to nobody. Being asked about it and saying, again, Brian Callahan was asked about it last week and said, look, there's 2 different, there's the what are we worried about today and what are we worried about long term. And sometimes those don't completely intersect. And that was his way of saying, sometimes you have to look at yourself in the mirror, realize your team's not very good, and then say, hey, we've got to build for the future. That's not really what Rand said. Because instead of saying, look, this season hasn't gone in the direction we thought, so we're getting what we can for the future, he turns it into some bullcrap about building the foundation. Quote, if we're going to build this thing for the long-term sustainability, you need draft picks in order to do so. So it was an opportunity for us to get draft picks. Coming into the season, we only had 5. It's hard to do that. So since then, we've made 3 trades, and we've been able to get 3 picks to get us to 8 picks for the next draft. If we want to build a foundation, we're going to have to do it through the draft. And we only had 5 picks, thanks in large part to the fact that we traded a 3rd for L'Jarius Sneed. We traded a 7th for a kicker. So we only had 5 picks, but now we have 8 to build our foundation on. Sounds good, right? Except that the picks that they got kind of suck. Okay? And let's put this in the context of draft capital. Let's put this in the context of, again, like the mathematic formulas that they use to determine the values of these picks. According to the trade chart, DeAndre Hopkins as a 5th, because DeAndre's not playing 60% of the snaps in Kansas City. DeAndre as a 5th. Ernest Jones and Malik Willis have a total value of 85, which is that of a high 4th round pick. So Hopkins, the 4th you got for Jones, and the pick you got for Willis, where they stand today, have the value of 85. Now let's go back to the 2024 draft, the second night when they took T'Vondre Sweat. The Titans took the defensive tackle with the 38th pick. The Rams, we know, traded up to 39, 1 pick behind the Titans, and we know what they gave Carolina. They gave Carolina 52, 155, and a 2025 second-round pick. It was a massive price to pay so that they could get Braden Fisk. Who knows if that was a good decision or not? That's their business, not mine. But let's go back to the math. The T'Vondre Sweat trade, and there is a video, and we played the cut over the summer of the Rams making a call, offering the trade to somebody else, and them saying no. Including Brian Callahan saying after the draft that there were teams that called that would have moved them down in the second round to where they would have dropped out of the caliber of player that they wanted. So it tracks. Again, T'Vondre Sweat, That's what they took. Instead of the Rams trade of 52, 155, and the Rams second round pick, which right now is pretty high because the Rams kind of stink. But the total value of that trade, according to the draft trade chart, was 579.4. By the way, the 32nd pick in a draft has a value of 600. So you're talking about essentially a first round pick. And who's to say that if you had made that trade, the Rams were going up for Braden Fisk. Who's to say if you made that trade that T'Vondre Sweat wouldn't have been there with the 52nd pick? The Ravens got their right tackle with the 62nd pick. So think about this. Again, talking about having draft picks and building for the future and a foundation and all of that. The DeAndre, Ernest, and Malik trades, the ones that, hey, we need draft picks. Value of 85. Trading back in the second round this year on draft night, a value of 579.4. Now, let me ask you this question. Is it easier to build a foundation with a high fourth round pick or a low first round pick? You know the answer. So I don't do this whole, we needed these picks to build a foundation. Look, I'm fine with getting something for nothing. Well, we would have lost Ernest Jones at the end of the year anyway, so might as well get a fourth round pick. That's fine. But building a foundation when you're acquiring day 3 picks, those are not traditionally foundational pieces. Sorry. Day 3 picks. Well, you know, we only had 5. Yeah, because you traded a third round pick for L'Jarius Sneed. How's that working out for you? So again, it's just so disingenuous, right? Like, it'd be nice if they just kind of shot it straight. At least Callahan kind of does that for whatever, you know, it's worth. It's unbelievable. By the way, the YouTube chat's mad because they're saying T'Vondre Sweat was a great pick. I keep hearing that. You know, there's like this big excuse that's not true, that Rand wasn't the GM last year, even though he held a press conference and got crappy with the media about them criticizing the picks. I guess some people believe that he wasn't the GM of the team that made those picks, so we shouldn't play. And like, look at this draft. Latham and Sweat. Well, Latham's a 7th pick. He should be good. And Sweat, again, he's a good run-stuffing DT. No quarterback hits, no quarterback sacks. I can get that in the 5th round. Those pieces, those picks you just got, the value of 85, you can get a run-stuffing DT. You can get a guard. Probably can't get your quarterback with those. Probably can't get A.J. Brown with those. But you can get a guard. One texter says, I think the votes for you as GM have increased. I have not looked at the poll since we've been on for the last hour. At Jared Stillman on Twitter. I guess they have, Ian. We started the show. It was, again, who would be better as GM of the Titans? Rand Carthon and Chad Brinker. 52%, me at 48. It's now 51-49.
Oh, boy.
We might have to get a recount with the way this is trending. I mean, it's a reality. By the way, I did say this the other day, and I texted you when you were off, Ian. Steve said he was leaving the YouTube chat and said he was done listening to the show. And I just realized we didn't hear from Steve yesterday on the YouTube chat. We didn't hear from Steve, the anti-Vrabel guy. We didn't hear from him in the text. Maybe he actually is stuck by his word and he's done with this show forever.
Maybe so.
Maybe so.
I don't know. That'd be sad.
615-737-1025 is our phone number here on the program, 615-737-1025. So, let me say this. Everybody wants to talk about the next quarterback. Everybody wants to talk about Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward, and do you take a QB? Are these QBs good enough? Or what about a trade for Sam Darnold? Or what about Matthew Stafford? What should they do? I have a hard time with that. We'll get to it next. Stillman and Company on 102.5 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Ian, I got to call out the distinguished gentleman on the YouTube chat.
Why? What happened?
You know I love him. I love him, even though he's a hater. I love him.
He is a hater.
He is the, Derek Mason, I called D Mace, the president of the Rand Club. But I'm thinking that the distinguished gentleman on the YouTube chat might be an even bigger Rand defender than D Mace. And he said on the YouTube chat saying somebody knows just as much as Jared about what's going on in the building, which is nothing. He doesn't even have a key card anymore. First of all, I never had a key card to the Titans organization. I do have a code. I did use it yesterday, and I did get in the building for the Brian Callahan press conference. So you guys sit here and say Jared can't get in the building. Jared got in the building yesterday. Just want everybody to know that. So every time the Titans get their rear end spanked, Twitter starts talking about Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward and what should we do at quarterback? Who should we use the number one pick on, Jared? That's what it always asks me. Who should we draft? Then some people are like, should we trade the pick and build a team before getting the quarterback? And then some people say, should we sign Sam Darnold? Should we trade for Matthew Stafford? What should we do? And every time I hear those discussions, I start to think to myself, aren't we putting the cart before the horse a little bit here? I understand when you're 1-6 and terrible, the only thing to look forward to is the NFL draft. I get that. And after seeing Houston draft C.J. Stroud and Washington draft Jaden Daniels, I think everyone sits there and sees it and thinks, can that be us? Can we be the team that drafts Cam Ward, that puts him, and it's Jaden Daniels 3.0 with Stroud being 1.0? But I have to ask everybody this. Before we decide that they need to trade for Matthew Stafford, which, again, I think is absolutely cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. All I get lectured by the YouTube chat and Willie Donick every day is, this is a rebuild, this is a rebuild, this is a rebuild. You want to trade for Matthew Stafford? Do you want to trade draft picks in a rebuild for an old quarterback? What? But I have to ask you this. How can you all get excited about this potential draft choice? That could be a quarterback. And how could you get excited about those quarterbacks if Chad Brinker, Rand Carthon, and Brian Callahan are the guys who, A, are making the pick, and B, developing the pick? I don't know how to get excited about that. Because let's start with this when assessing their ability to evaluate and develop the next quarterback. Their jobs, all of them, when it comes to quarterback, all of their jobs have been about Will Levis. Rand and Chad were in the front office last year when they drafted Will Levis. And by the way, it was Rand, not Mike Vrabel, who got defensive the day the pick was made. Remember, hey, media, be positive about these draft picks. It might be the greatest day of their lives. I actually heard Robbie and Joe talking about that earlier this morning, and I texted Robbie. Ian, I don't know if you remember, but Rand got mad at the media for asking all these questions about Levis and Tajay Spears, even though that's the whole point of a press conference. Rand got mad about the questions, said that this might be the best night in some of these guys' lives. So can we please keep it positive because these guys' parents are going to watch it. And if you watch the video of that press conference, Vrabel sitting at the table with Rand, and immediately Vrabel just stops blinking and stares into space. And 7 minutes later, Vrabel goes, if the night you were picked is the best night of your career, you probably didn't have a very good NFL.
I remember that, yeah.
I mean, and I actually looked it up, like in body language. I said, what does it mean when somebody just stops blinking and stares directly? And Google said that it was a sign of intense anger, which I did think was pretty funny. But again, they drafted Will Levis. Brian Callahan was hired for Will Levis. And there is no doubt and there is no arguing that Will Levis is worse than he was last year under Mike Vrabel. This group cut bait on Malik Willis And Malik Willis goes to Green Bay, looks like a legitimate quarterback, and has outplayed the two quarterbacks the Titans have for whatever reason. It's like I was texting Adam Vingan the other day, and I was like, these guys, I mean, look at Malik. Look at Malik. And he's like, well, did you expect Malik to be able to do all this? No, but that's because they were screwing it up. So if they're going to take Levis and make him worse than he was last year, and they're going to trade Malik, and Malik goes somewhere and looks better, why would that give any of us hope? Why would that give any of us hope that they could draft Cam Ward and make him a star, or draft Shedeur Sanders and make him a star, or trade for somebody and make him a star? Why would it give you any faith that that's going to happen? That's why I can't get excited about this. I mean, I want the number one pick. I want the number one pick, the number two pick. I want the option to draft the best quarterback. I want the option to draft the best player if the best player isn't a quarterback the way the Lions drafted Aiden Hutchinson. I want the option to trade down and get a bunch of draft picks, because I know that you build your foundation and you add draft capital on draft night. You add draft capital by trading down. That's how you add draft capital. You don't, or you give away a quarterback the way that the Texans traded Deshaun Watson, which you don't have. That's how you get draft capital. You don't get draft capital by picking up fifth-round picks at the deadline. But how can you get excited about it when the guys that picked Levis would be picking the next guy? How can you get excited when the guy who was hired to develop Levis has made him worse would be the guy developing this guy? And that's a serious question. How do you get excited about that? And I understand we have to find something in this godforsaken season to get excited about. But how do we get excited about that? How do we get excited about drafting Cam Ward and thinking it'll be okay? And there's another thing that I don't believe in when it comes to quarterback selection and quarterback development and quarterback. And the Chicago Bears are going through that right now. Last year, the Chicago Bears had Matt Eberflus in year 2, and the team won 7 games, and they looked like they were, getting a little bit better. And I said on SiriusXM at the time, I said they need to fire Matt Eberflus. And somebody called in and was like, Matt Eberflus is a great coach, Jared. He brought in Shane Waldron, a great coordinator. I said, yeah, but here's my problem. Matt Eberflus is not a special coach. Caleb Williams is a special talent at quarterback. You want a new staff, a new GM, a new coach, you want them to make the pick on this guy. Instead, what Chicago's going to do is they're going to fire Matt Eberflus at the end of this year. They're going to hire a new head coach, and then that new head coach will be able to say, if Caleb Williams doesn't work out, that I didn't draft Caleb Williams. That's what's going to happen. You know why? Because that's what happened with Matt Eberflus. Matt Eberflus didn't draft Justin Fields. Well, that's not my guy. And what happened to the coach before that, Matt Nagy? He didn't draft Mitch Trubisky. John Fox did. Chicago just keeps doing the same thing over and over and over again. So everyone tells me, give him a chance, give him a chance, give him a chance. Ian, you remember what Floyd used to say about the likelihood that you would win with a rookie quarterback?
Very little.
Very little. It might happen with a Ben Roethlisberger. It might happen with you let these guys use the number 1 pick on a quarterback, and it doesn't immediately work, they're all going to be fired. If this team, let's say that the midday show gets their wish, and the Titans don't fire anybody, and it's the same. Brinker, Carthon, Callahan, the same going into next year. They draft Cam Ward, and they're 1-6 again. Nobody is going to say, at that point, nobody is going to say, well, they need another year. Everyone's just going to say, they're getting fired. Well, now you hire a new GM and a new coach, and they didn't draft Cam Ward. They didn't draft Shedeur Sanders, so now you're starting the cycle again. And I don't believe in that. And now there's a lot of talk, too, about, well, Deion has said he might pull an Eli Manning. And do you want to be the organization that Deion doesn't want Shedeur to go to? I got a thought on that. We'll do it next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game.
I've got primetime Deion Sanders as my coach of the year. Let's get that out the way right now. He was projected to finish 11th in the Big 12. 11th. The man is 6-2. They didn't wonder whether or not he was going to win 4 games like he did last year. He's already won 6. They rank in the top 25. And this brother, Travis Hunter, has re-entered the Heisman Trophy race. I'm looking at his numbers right now. 9 catches, 153 yards, 2 touchdowns on 9 targets, added 4 pass breakups, okay, and 2 tackles on defense, playing a total of 130 snaps. Yes, he is a leading candidate for the Heisman Trophy. Shedeur Sanders, even with hip injury and all, completed 25 of 30 passes for 323 yards and 2 touchdowns through the air. Listen, you can't say enough.
That was Stephen A. Smith. By the way, talking about Deion Sanders for Coach of the Year, and I am a Deion hater, and I will give Deion credit. Colorado's better than people thought. But let me say this. Without evaluating the landscape of college football, because I like college football, Ian, but
Sure you do.
I mean, I like the NFL more. Shouldn't Clark Lee be in the mix for Coach of the Year? You know, I mean, it's easy for Stephen A. to get up there and say his buddy Deion should be Coach of the Year, and Deion's done a nice job. But shouldn't Clark Lee, like, who is more deserving of the National Coach of the Year, Deion Sanders or Clark Lee? Deion Sanders didn't beat Alabama. Deion Sanders didn't go toe-to-toe with Texas the way Clark Lee did. Now, Deion hasn't lost to Georgia State either, but I'm just saying. But again, the big talk is about Deion's son, Shedeur. And I hear a lot of people talking about, well, Deion has said that if Shedeur gets drafted by a team that they don't like, by a bad organization, that Deion's going to pull in Archie and Eli Manning and that they won't go to that team. Let me just say this. I do not care about Deion Sanders' empty threat. Number one, who's to say the Titans will qualify as a bad organization that Deion Sanders won't want to do business with? If the draft were held today, here's who would be, in the Shedeur Sanders range. Carolina. Now, who would you consider to be a worse organization? Carolina, who's already ruined Bryce Young, or Tennessee? The answer is Carolina. New England is number 3. You're number 2. New England's number 3. They already have a quarterback. The Jets. Now, again, when we talk about dysfunctional organizations, the Titans are absolutely dysfunctional. But are they more publicly dysfunctional than the Jets? And also, the Jets have ruined a high quarterback recently in Zach Wilson. Jacksonville would be next. They have a quarterback. And then New Orleans would be at 6. So you'd have to get all the way to 6, Deion would, in order to get his wish. Like, what would make the Titans a worse organization than the Jets or Carolina? So that's the first thing. Number 2, Deion has always been about his money. Whether it was when he opened that now defunct high school prime prep, or even when he got mad at the Braves after his dad passed away in 1993. You know what brought Deion back from grieving? A new contract. So Deion has always been about the bottom line. If the Titans hold the number 2 pick and Deion says, no way, they'd be passing on a slot value in last year's draft, so this number will go up, but it will probably all go up accordingly. They will be passing on a slot value of $37.7 million, fully guaranteed. That is how much money Jaden Daniels got by being drafted with the number 2 pick, 37.7. Let's say Deion rather have Shedeur be a Raider, and the Raiders have the 7th pick. That has a slot value of $26 million. You think Deion is about to talk Shedeur out of $12 million over the Titans? Well, I'd rather him be a Raider, so let's just punt on $12 million. Don't think that's going to happen. And third, when it comes to Shedeur and Deion and the future and all of that, my biggest concern about Shedeur Sanders as a franchise quarterback isn't that he doesn't have talent. Shedeur Sanders is incredibly talented. It's, can he leave Deion and all of the nonsense behind in Boulder? Deion talks. Deion's always. Shador's going to have to go into an NFL operation and earn everybody's respect. Then you can be treated like the man. You can't be treated like the man before you've earned everybody's respect. So can he do that? And that concerns me more than any of this stuff about whether or not Deion would want Shador to be with you. So spare me with the everyone get on your knees and beg for Shador and Deion bullcrap, because that doesn't work in the NFL. I'm sorry. That does not work. 615-737-1025, and our phone line is driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. That is 615-737-1025. I love all the excuse making. For instance, Malik Willis. Look, I didn't think Malik Willis was very good either. Now, I did think Malik Willis got better, and I did argue that Malik Willis should be on the 53-man roster. And I was disappointed when they traded Malik for a 7th. Now, I didn't think that Malik would be 3-0 the way he is with the Green Bay Packers. And he, again, led them down for the game-winning drive on Sunday. One texter says, GMs don't develop players. Stop with the foolishness. The picks and players have been fine. It's up to shoot 'em straight Callahan to develop them. Callahan decided that Malik was third string. Rand definitely had the conversation with Callahan about needing a third quarterback or not, and apparently they didn't, and Rand went out and got some value for Malik. Again, blame Callahan, don't blame Rand. First of all, GMs are very much a part of the development of players. What do you think? They just draft them and say, here you go. I'm off to the Bahamas. Why do you think GMs go to practice? So I hear we got value. You got a 7th round pick. The value of the pick, according to the draft trade chart, is 1. It's a bag of balls. Now, I was surprised that somebody was willing to trade for Malik, and I have been surprised by how good Malik has been. But at the same time, don't sit here and say, like, hey, at least they got value. At least the question is, why is this guy better than he ever was as a Tennessee Titan? Why is this guy playing better at quarterback than your 2 quarterbacks who you said were significantly ahead of him and it wasn't close? Why is he playing better than them? Is it because Green Bay has better receivers? Is it because Green Bay has a better coach? Why is it? Somebody help me understand this. By the way, someone in the YouTube chat, Ian, says that I was not disappointed. I was thrilled that the Titans got value for Malik. I was not happy with the Titans when they traded Malik Willis. Not that it was the end of the world, but I had guaranteed that he would make the team. And I was disappointed that the Titans thought they didn't need a third quarterback.
I mean, they got a 7th. That's not much value. I guess it's something, but
again, the value on the chart is a value of 1. Just for comparison, you traded a pick that was in the same value range to the Cleveland Browns this offseason, a pick in this previous draft for Leroy Watson, a guy who, again, is, I guess he's technically not on the practice squad, but is essentially a practice squad player. That's what you got from Malik, a practice squad player. Whoa. Yay. I mean, come on now. We're smarter than that. 615-737-1025. Now, I have just been banging on Carthon and Brinker, and I think that, again, that's got to change. I think the number one problem is the owner, but I don't trust the people she's hired. But a lot of people want to bag on the coach. And I do want to talk about the coach because I do feel like I have almost ignored the coach because I think the problems are bigger than the coach. But there's one thing about this coach I absolutely love. There's a lot of things right now that I'm starting not to like. We'll get to that coming up next. This week's Nashville's best deal of the week is Teddy's Tavern. Teddy's Tavern is your go-to spot for great food, cold drinks, and live music right in the heart of downtown. Get half off a $100 gift card now for the Teddy's Tavern at thegamenashville.com/deals while supplies last.
How patient has Amy been through this process as you guys go through these struggles?
Yeah, look, none of us are that patient, you know. And again, any conversation with her, I'll leave between us. But at the end of the day, you know, we communicate, we speak, we talk. All of us, you know, between Rand and Chad and myself and Amy, we have the conversations that we need to have. We lay it out. There's no sugarcoating anything, and we know what the plan is and where we're headed and how we're going to get there. But yeah, those things are it's all part of it, you know. And it's all you're only as patient as you know what it's the NFL. There's not a lot of patience anywhere in the NFL, and we got to find a way to get better.
I love answers like that from Brian Callahan. I do. You can ask a question, how patient is Amy with the vision? And you think Mike Vrabel would have sat there and said, hey, you can only be so patient. This is the NFL. We got to find answers. You think he would have said that? Or do you think it would have been some smug, condescending a-hole? Don't tell me what do you think would have happened? And I appreciate Brian Callahan. And I was thinking about this today, this topic that I wanted to do, and I labeled it in the grid. I just don't know about Brian Callahan. And then I wrote, but I think it's kind of my way of saying that I do know, and I just don't want to say it. I like Brian Callahan. Brian Callahan's a good man. He really is. He's a good man. He is kind to people. I think that, again, when these players sit there and talk about how much they enjoy play, I think there's something to that. But the coaching results are just not there. And forget about the 1-6 record, because, again, that's going to define whether or not you're any good as if you win games. Forget about the 1-6, and forget about the 30th ranked offense and all of that. To me, there's all these red flags right now that are surrounding the Callahan administration. And while I get it, it's his first year on the job and coaches learn, and certainly Mike Vrabel wasn't perfect, and he absolutely wasn't perfect his first year. This is not a training wheels job. This is a big boy job. And the red flags just keep adding up, and this is independent of the incompetence from Amy, Brinker, and Carthon. This is Callahan we're talking about here. Number one, I hear too much excuse making from Brian Callahan. Jeffrey Simmons got flagged for a penalty against the Packers that took a missed field goal off the board, and Green Bay ended up scoring a touchdown. And after the game, he said, I don't know that they should have called that. He blamed the refs. Yesterday was all about the punt returns. And listen to him. He's asked about, TD asked a very detailed question about the punt returns. And listen to how Callahan talks about this, about how they adjusted to the punt returns. The reason they're giving up the returns are because they had to adjust because they were getting so many punts blocked.
We need to do a better job. I think Stoney can do a better job of putting the ball in the air longer, give us a chance to cover, because the reality of it is we made some personnel changes on that punt unit after the block punts early in the season, try to settle it down, which we've done. They've done a really nice job protecting the punter, but we've sacrificed a little bit of speed and coverage ability with some of the bigger bodies in there to protect the punter. And when you do that, the ball's got to hang up further, and we have to have a chance to get down the field and cover. Obviously we're down some gunners because those guys are now, playing more football for us with Nick Westbrook, and Jarvis was one of the gunners too. And, so we got to do a better job of complementing each other in each phase of the punt unit. And right now we're not doing a good enough job of that. Our hang time, I think, is averaging somewhere around 4.0, which has got to be higher than that, and to give ourselves a chance.
I mean, listen to all the excuse making right there. Well, we're not punting the ball high enough. We had to change out our punt protection team because we were getting too many punts blocked. So now we got more fat guys out on the punt team than we had originally. And he also talked about that on the coach's show when he said that they've put Nick Vanette in there and they've put Jalen Harrell in there. So they put bigger guys on the punt team so they don't get them blocked. And then talk to, again, it's like, oh, well, we're trying to not get them blocked. And so we've gotten better at not getting them blocked, but now we're giving up the big returns. How come the other 31 teams are able to both block for the punt it, I said both, but this is really three things, block for the punt it, and cover it? Oh, well, we had NWI and we had Jarvis Brownlee as our gunners, and now we got new gunners, and now we got... Why is it that every other team in the league can block for their punter and still tackle a returner. It's too many excuses. So that's the first thing. Again, this coach, he's making too many excuses. I don't like it. The second red flag with Brian Callahan's coaching that I really don't like, I really see a lack of holding others accountable. And being a coach is all about accountability. Jeffrey Simmons throws a punch in practice, and he says, "Stop it, guys." I said at the time, I asked him that day, I said, "Why didn't you throw Simmons out of practice?" He said, "I didn't think I needed to throw him out of practice." And I said, his parenting, running that, I wouldn't have done that. The special teams coach can't do anything right. Doesn't know the rules, can't protect the punter, can't stop a return, can't line up correctly on a kickoff. And yet yesterday, he's played in the NFL, so he knows. And it makes me ask, when I see this lack of accountability or holding others accountable, it makes me ask, does Brian Callahan have a confrontational bone in his body? I don't want to hear about Brian Callahan walking into the locker room in Cincinnati and yelling at them, telling them they needed to pick it up. I'm talking about true confrontation and holding other people accountable. Can he do that? Can he hold his coaches accountable? Can he hold his players accountable? I mean, Calvin Ridley came out after he had 8 targets, and didn't catch one and was bitching about it after the game. And instead of, Calvin and I had a talk, we sat him down. Instead of that, it was, I think it's a good thing that Calvin said that. Again, not to say that Mike Vrabel was the greatest in the world at being accountable, because at times I thought he wasn't. But Calvin Ridley would have never done that if Mike Vrabel was the coach. Mike Vrabel, even though it took pulling teeth, did fire coaches. And I'm not saying Brian Callahan won't at the end of the year, but I'm just saying, I shouldn't have to ask whether or not the coach can hold people accountable. And yet, Jeffrey Simmons throws a punch, and oh no, it'll be fine. Stop it, guys. The third red flag when it comes to Callahan, key players are playing worse under Callahan than they did Mike Vrabel. Levis, Simmons, DeAndre Hopkins when he was here, and players are going elsewhere after being discarded and are playing better than they played here. Elijah Molden has 2 interceptions. The Titans as a team have 1. Malik Willis has 3 wins quarterbacking the Green Bay Packers. The Titans as a team have 1. At some point, that's got to be a concern, right? The fact that, again, you get rid of guys, we don't need this guy, and he goes off and he plays better somewhere else, and Will Levis plays worse this year than he did last year. And the final red flag is the Titans are absolutely horrendous in the second half. Now, I'd argue they're pretty bad at times in the first half too, but they are awful in the second half of these games. Every single one of them. Doesn't matter. Chicago, the Jets, the Bills, the Lions, it does not matter. The Titans have 12 points in the fourth quarter over 7 games, and they all came against the Dolphins, which means 0 points against the awful Jets, 0 points versus the 32nd ranked Colts defense, and 0 points in garbage time against Buffalo and Detroit. The Titans averaged 11 points in the first half this season and 5 in the second half. And now both are horrible. 11's bad, 5's bad. They're both horrible. But to not even average a touchdown in the second half? So what are all these other coaches doing at halftime that is outsmarting the Titans, out-scheming the Titans, out-adjusting the whatever? And it's every single coach. From moron Matt Eberflus in Chicago to already fired Robert Saleh with the Jets to Bozo in Detroit, who cost his team a Super Bowl last year because we're going to go for it. Every single coach is out-dueling them in the second half. And if you take out the Miami game, and I know I do this a lot where I'm like, well, if this hadn't happened. But again, They scored, I want to say something like 20 points, 26 points or something in the second half against Miami. Take out the Miami game. If you take out the Miami game, the Titans are averaging 2.3 points in the second half. Not even a field goal. That's awful. So I like Brian Callahan. I do. And I appreciate Brian Callahan because he does treat other people with respect. And I like the fact that Brian Callahan answers whatever question you may ask. And I asked him a toughie yesterday, and I got to give him credit because I thought he handled it pretty well. But at the same time, like, what I'm looking at, I would not accept this from anybody. The excuse making, the lack of holding others accountable, key players getting worse under him than they were Vrabel, and just getting absolutely torched every second half. Those are some pretty serious red flags. Those are, I'm sorry, that's concerning. That is, and I'm not, again, I think the problems go beyond Callahan. So when people are like, well, I think we just need to fire Callahan, I'm like, well, hold on. I think the problems are above Callahan. I think you got to get that fixed. But it's not been impressive. And again, I didn't even bring up the record. Say, well, they're 1-6. That's why I think he's doing a bad job. I didn't say that. But when you keep telling me that this special teams coach isn't a total bozo, I got a problem with that. Because I'm watching the games on Sunday. So, make of that what you will. 615-737-1025. And there's a new complaint that is starting to follow the special teams. And I'm just going to say this one time. If you really don't like it, you better do something about it. If not, I don't want to hear about it. We'll get to it next. Stillman and Company on 102.5 The Game.
hang time become maybe even more of an issue when a guy like Stonehouse kicks it as far as he does? Does that actually maybe hurt when the hang time?
Right now, it is hurting us. Yes, I mean some of the punts that we've had where it gets down the field and it goes long down the field, but it doesn't hang up in the air and give us enough time to get down there to cover, puts us in a tough spot. And then our fundamentals of it got to be better too. We were in position yesterday. The first punt return should have never got out. We should have been able to get them on the ground, and we don't, because we miss a tackle or two, and then all of a sudden you miss 2 tackles and a punt return, and in the NFL it's out. And so we got to be better there fundamentally, and then we can find some ways personnel wise to help us, and then there's some things schematically we can do to help our guys as well. So like it's an all hands on deck approach to getting solutions to some of our issues, and again we've fixed previous issues, and now other issues are showing up that we have to find a way to get better at quickly, because again we can't give up the return yards that we gave up.
So there's now a new excuse on special teams. It's that Stonehouse is not getting enough hang time on his punts. Ian, you buying this? That, at first it was this guy's fault because of the punt protection. Now we fixed that. Now Stonehouse isn't getting enough hang time on his punt, so we turned Khalif Raymond into Dante Hall.
I guess I'd have to get the stopwatch out. Haven't really seen they used to have that on the broadcast, the hang time ticker.
I remember when Fox introduced it. Yeah. John Madden was like, this is a really important stat, because when the ball goes in the air, you want to get the punt up in the air as long as you can. Boom.
I haven't seen that in a minute, so maybe have to bring that back just for Titans games.
So let me say this. I have no idea if it's true or not. If the hang time on Stonehouse's punts are an issue, I have no idea. I assume they probably are. But this is the first time hearing about hang time. So now there's been a lot of talk about, we need Stoney to get more hang time on his punts. Can't blame the coaches. They asked him to get more hang time. Well, if he can't do what you're asking him to do, what you need to do to keep Khalif Raymond from scoring a touchdown every time he touches it, then maybe you need to get a new punter. Now, again, Stonehouse is fine. I do not think that he is Ray Guy by any stretch of the imagination. Now, he can punt the crap out of the ball. There's no denying that. I mean, he can rocket launch it. Like, he can, and I'll give him credit there. But as far as changing the game with his ability, he's never really been that guy. Talking about Stonehouse. Brett Kern was like a surgeon with how he could punt the ball. If you got it around midfield, Brett Kern could put that ball down at the 8-yard line and give your defense a great shot. I mean, again, he was a magician. I was talking to Chase about it the other day. I was like, he was like Greg Maddux punting the ball back there. Stonehouse really has never been that guy. But again, I look at it like this. If you're going to say, well, now the problem is the punter, then prove it to me and change the punter. If the problem's the punter, then change them and get a new one in here. Because the old line is you're either coaching it or you're allowing it to happen. And what I fear about the Titans when it comes to their punt woes is that they just won't change anything. And they'll just say, well, we need more hang time, and just shrug it off. And then you're just making excuses, which again speak to the lack of accountability. Now, I'm sure some people will hear that and say, Jared Stillman wants to get rid of Stonehouse. And that's not what I'm saying. I have no idea if the hang time is good or bad, or I have no idea. But what I'm saying is, if you're going to do every interview after the game and you're going to say the problem is the hang time, then either get him to punt the ball in the air or put somebody else in there to punt. To me, it's as simple as that. What's not acceptable is to do nothing and then say, well, we need more hang time. You're the coach. Do something about it. And I'm getting tired. I brought this up in the last segment. I'm getting tired of what I consider to be a lack of accountability on the coaching staff's part to hold other people accountable. And it starts with the head coach, because the special teams coach screwing everything up, doesn't know the rules, and they're not holding him accountable. So what I'm saying is, if you got a problem with Stonehouse, do something about it. If not, stop making an excuse. Unbelievable. One texter into the text line said he literally said WTF are you doing to Will Levis on live TV? Yeah, and then what did he do about it? Nothing. Because, again, he doesn't hold people accountable. I will never forget the next day. I was watching his press conference after the Jets game, and I think John Glennon asked the question, do you have to be more aware? Do you have to be more aware of the cameras now that you're a head coach? And he said, yeah, I probably do. Now that I'm the head coach, when you're a coordinator up in the booth, it's not the same as being a head coach on the sideline. And when I heard that, I was like, no, wait a minute. No. You do not need to apologize for cursing out Will Levis for rolling the ball on the ground. And then Koharski followed up with, why? Like, why do you need to explain what he was like, well, I love Will Levis really. I love him, and I don't want him to think It's okay, buddy. We can hold people accountable and still love them. It's okay. It's fine. But, in Titanland, it's like, oh, no. By the way, Ian, I did see that Gentry has just wrote a column. He's written some scathers, by the way, at the Tennessean.
Okay.
And Gentry was talking about Titanland in his latest column.
That's right.
I did get get a nice little kick out of that one in Titanland. But Gentry's been writing some heaters for the Tennessean. I got to give him credit. Gentry's my guy. Gentry has to, let me say this, and I don't want to put anybody else down because I like everybody. I think Gentry is the second most critically thinking Titan pundit out there. Like, I think that and I'm talking about, really critical, and that's not a knock on anybody else. But I am a Gentry Estes supporter. One texter says, I cannot believe the amount of Ram support in the program before you. Continuing to make excuses, well, they're missing tackles and blocks. That's not coaching, according to D. Mace. I couldn't believe it. Let me say this. The amount of Ran defense, that's why I've nicknamed our midday show the Ran Club. With Derek and Willie, Adam is kind of the moderator. Think of him as remember when First Take used to be, think of it when he was Skip and Shannon, and then they had, in the middle, they had Joy Reid or whoever it is. Jason Taylor, Joy Taylor, that's it. Joy Reid's on cable news.
I think she's political, yeah.
Joy Taylor. Jason Taylor says she was in the middle. Think of Adam as the moderator. When they start talking about Rand Carthon, that show becomes the Rand Club with Derek and Willie featuring Adam. There's something I've got to take umbrage with. Now, there's a lot of things I got to take umbrage with from that, but there's one thing in particular that I think a lot of people believe, but it's not true. Or even if it is true, which I don't think it is, it's not bad. We'll explain. We'll get to it next. Stillman and Company on 102.5 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. So I've got to take umbrage with our midday show. And let me say this off the top, Ian. I love Willie, Derek, and Adam.
Yes.
You know that?
Yes, we do.
Everybody knows that. You know, about a year and some change ago, although it might have been right about a year ago, we had a big staff meeting, and everybody at 102.5 was in the staff meeting, I believe, except for Ian. Believe you were the only one that wasn't there for that staff meeting.
Okay, I believe that.
You like being called out like that?
Sure.
Okay. So I think everybody but Ian was in. So we were all in the conference room at work, and we were talking about, you know, like the bosses tell you all kinds of important stuff you need to know that we probably shouldn't share here. But then it was kind of just everybody sitting around chatting. And we talked about how we have what I call a take-shaming culture, which is we get on each other. We hear something we don't like, we talk about it on our shows. And I said in the meeting, I was like, I just want you guys to know that when I disagree with your sports opinion, it doesn't mean that I think you're a bad guy or, you know, a bad host I mean, clearly I'm listening to what you have to say, so I'm paying you the biggest compliment you can have because I'm listening, and that whole meeting turned into like everybody's like, oh, yeah, we love getting on each other. We this, oh, yeah, no, it's great. And ever since then, ever since that meeting, I feel like we have gone after each other just the right amount, but we love each other just the right amount too. You know, it's a very fine line to walk in radio when it comes to crapping on somebody you work with's opinion. Because there's a lot of stations where hosts on different shows don't like each other. And so all of a sudden, one host criticizes another host and it gets personal. And the second that happens, it goes away for everybody. So I want to make this abundantly clear that I disagree with a lot of things I hear on our midday program. But that doesn't mean that I don't listen to it. That doesn't mean that I don't like them. And that doesn't mean that I'm not saving up Derek Mason crazy takes to discuss at 9:30 on Sunday for the award-winning pregame show. But I got to take umbrage with something Willie Donick said yesterday. And Willie Donick has said this repeatedly when it comes to me and my opinion that I think the Titans are so bad and are going nowhere. And I think they need to clean house with the president, the GM, the coach at the end of the year. They need to start from scratch. And this is what Willie said yesterday on the program.
Well, Jared's solution to everything is just clean house, start over, get somebody else without any regard to who that person would be or why or anything like that, or any knowledge of there is a person better out there.
This isn't, by the way,
that's his rule of thumb.
Okay. I don't think that's fair. I'm just going to say, because I think there's a lot of people that assume what Willie just said. I'm not saying like Willie brought this into the forum and now people are like, oh, he's right. Jared always wants to clean it. I think there's a lot of people that listen as they say, Jared Stillman just wants to fire everybody. That's the reality. He wants to fire every coach. He wants to fire my best friend's dad at a Christmas party when I said, hey, the Titans got to clean house. I was like, they got to burn it to the ground and start over. They got to fire Carthon. They got to fire Vrabel. They got to move on. He said, that's your answer to everything is fire the coach. I'm like, that's not true. Because there have been firings around here that I was significantly against. I was against Mike Mularkey being fired. Why? Because he won games. I didn't know that they were going to hire the coach of the year with the next hire. What I knew was in my lifetime of watching the Titans, they had Jeff Fisher, who was okay and then terrible. Mike Munchak, who was terrible, but not as bad as the guy that followed him. Ken Wisenhunt, who was an abomination to football. And then a guy who won games. It wasn't sexy, but he won. I wasn't ready to give up on the guy who was winning games. Shocking, I know, valuing winning. So I was against that. I was against John Robinson being fired when he was fired. Personally, I believe Robinson had earned enough through the success he had. I know you guys want to discount it, but it is what it is. I thought he had earned another offseason to be able to turn it around. That's what I thought. I certainly don't think he should have been fired in the middle of the year. I certainly don't believe that. So I was against that. I was against Peter Laviolette being fired because I knew he was a good coach. They brought in this bozo John Hines, and he gets up there and starts saying all these buzzwords with no meaning. And I'm like, you got rid of the best coach, the most, the guy that has hung the banners there. You got rid of him for this? So you can say I'm always about firing the coach, but a lot of the time I don't want to fire the coach, and they do. That's not my decision. And this is what I said to my best friend's dad when he said, you just want to fire everybody. That's all you want. That's all you. Here's who I've wanted to fire. Jerry Stackhouse, Butch Jones, John Hines and David Boyle, and last year at the end of the year, Mike Vrabel and Rand Carthon. And in those cases, I was right. I was right about Jerry Stackhouse. That guy couldn't coach. Ian, didn't I hit like 4 guarantees over the years because of Jerry Stackhouse failure-related items?
I can't remember the exact number, but it's multiple.
I mean, I'm like, he can't coach. No, Jared, you know what I'm saying? Remember Joe Rexrode used to write all those puff pieces about Jerry Stackhouse about, he's an incredible coach. Okay. Butch Jones, I didn't buy that bull crap. The brick by brick and 5-star hearts, and I didn't buy any of that the same way I don't buy the Rand Carthon ball didn't bounce our way. Ian, I'd like to say I was right about Butch Jones.
Okay, we'll see about that one.
John Hines as head coach of the Predators won exactly 1 playoff game. And there should be a debate as to whether or not it was actually a playoff game. It was really a play-in game. And they won 1. And they got beaten that series in 4 games in a best-of-5 in the play-ins against Arizona, which is so bad they don't even exist anymore. I remember they got swept by Colorado, and they were like, well, hey, we, by the way, Willie, God bless him, and I love him, but Willie couldn't have defended John Hines any harder. Felt bad for Caroline some of those days. They used to go at it over John Hines. But I was right about that. And then with Vrabel and Carthon, I mean, again, I said last year they need to clean house. Nobody disputed the Vrabel thing. Everybody got mad at me about Carthon. Called me racist. Well, how you like it now? You're 1-6. This time last year, you were 3-4. Right now, you're 1-6. You're worse. It's crazy, but it's the truth. I was told I wasn't being too fair to Rand. They begged me, give Rand a second chance. Fine, they're worse now. What happens is people will say, you keep firing GMs and coaches and blah, blah, blah. But that's not true. I didn't fire some of the guys they fired. I didn't fire Malarkey. I didn't fire Robinson. I didn't fire those guys. They did. So I'm not responsible for their decision because people say, well, the Titans, it'll be so dysfunctional if they just keep firing coaches and GMs, and you can't fire Robinson and then fire Rand 2 years later. I didn't fire John Robinson. I'm calling the balls and the strikes. And I'm telling you right now, he's nowhere near the plate. He's got to go. I think the difference is, and I mean this, God bless you guys. I believe that most people in local medias across the country, I think the difference between me and local media traditionally is that it's not that I fire everyone. It's that I'm willing to fire someone. Let's say Amy fired Rand Carthon tomorrow. At 10 a.m., Jim Wyatt puts out a tweet. The Titans have relieved Rand Carthon of his duties. Titans controlling owner Amy Adams Strunk says, we wish him nothing but the best and thank him for his time as GM and whatever. Let's say that happens. The media would not condemn Amy. They would not say, Amy Adams Strunk is off her rocker again. This is an all-time bad move. They just start talking about who the next GM would be. And everybody would go on with their lives. I watched it with the John Hines thing. When we sat in purgatory for like a month waiting for Barry Trotz, waiting for the white smoke to emerge from Bridgestone Arena. And I remember, during it, I was adamantly against Hines. I didn't want him back. I wanted a new coach. I wanted a coach that didn't get up there at the podium and say, if we didn't give up 7 goals in a period, we would have won. I wanted a good coach. Everybody else was like, well, no, he got fired and it was like, oh, okay. In fact, I got in trouble, Ian, because they said, hey, I was being too hard on John Hines after he got fired. They were like, can you let the John Hines thing go? I'm like, but I was right. Because I put it on the mahogany. So again, when Willie says, oh, Jared, he just wants to clean house all the time. When was I wrong? Was I wrong last year at the end of the season when I said it's time to clean house and start over? Was I wrong when I said it's time for John Hines and David Poyle to go? Was I wrong about Jerry Stackhouse? By the way, if you notice, Clark Lee had a really rough year last year at Vanderbilt. I never called. Ian backed me up. I never called for Clark to be fired.
I don't think so.
I was worried about it, but I didn't call for it. So again, when I say the Titans need to clean house, I don't get upset, but I do want to push back that this isn't Jared Stillman stirring the pot. This is, if you want to be good, this is what's got to happen. I'm just telling you. Same with John Hines, same with Jerry Stackhouse, same with Butch Jones, I'm not saying it because I enjoy it. I'm saying it because it's true. But again, when everybody gets 7 years and everybody gets the benefit of the doubt and everybody gets I guess there's going to be one guy that wants to hold people accountable. That's all I'm saying. 615-737-1025, Stillman and Company on 1025 again.
Rand, you said when at the draft or when you were introduced that your number one thing was to serve Mike. Given today's developments, did you fail at that?
I don't think we failed. I just think, one of the things Mike's always says is that the ball isn't round, so you don't know how it's going to bounce. And I don't think the ball bounced our way. We had 7 one-score losses this year, so we were in games, just the ball didn't bounce our way. I wouldn't consider it a failure, but by no means, were we happy with the results. And that's just something we've talked about, privately and as a group over the last couple months of, how do we get this thing right and how do we get this thing, in the right direction. So I wouldn't call it a failure, but it's definitely not up to the standard.
The ball didn't bounce our way. 7 one-score games and the ball just didn't bounce our way. That was in January. Sunday in Detroit. Question. This is from Nick Suss of the Tennessean. Looking at what's happened in the first 7 games and building for the last 10, what do you expect from the season, having seen what you've seen? Quote, I expect our guys to continue to play hard, which is what they do. The ball's not round. You don't know which way it's going to bounce sometimes. It's those couple of opportunities that we had in the game where we jar the ball loose, but it bounces right back to them. And then on the other side of us, it gets away from us. So you can't predict which way the ball bounces. He continues to say, so we've got to continue to fight until the ball bounces our way. Now, I did hear D-Mace today trying to defend that, saying that he meant figuratively the ball didn't bounce their way. No, I'm pretty sure when you say that, hey, we fumble the ball and it goes to them and they fumble the ball and it goes to us, that he's literally talking about the ball not bouncing their way. But apparently that's Rand's new go-to. I actually thought we had shamed him so much for having said that in January that he would have never, ever, ever said that again. Unfortunately, he said it yesterday, which proves that he thinks you all are stupid, unless you thought that the Titans were a couple of bounces of the ball away from overcoming a 38-point defeat. So yesterday, Brian Callahan met in front of the media, and I asked Brian Callahan specifically about that ball not bouncing our way comment. And here's what Brian Callahan had to say. That when reflecting on the first 7 games, that the ball just hasn't bounced the team's way this year. Do you believe that?
There's moments where it feels like that, but there's also a part of football where you have to make your own luck to some degree too. You got to those things that feel like luck and feel like the bounces go your way or don't go your way. Part of that is making it happen for yourself too. We've also given away a lot, and that's there's moments where it feels like there's like 3 plays a game where it's like, what in the world is happening right now? Like, how does this even happen? But there's a part of the ball bouncing your way. Like, good teams have to kind of just goes your way sometimes. The ball, they end up with the ball, they make plays on the ball. There's a momentum factor that it's hard to like pinpoint what that is. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely times where it's felt that way. But again, I'm more in the line of you sort of have to create those opportunities and you have to make your luck a bit too in this league. And we've not done a good enough job of it.
Ian, I got to say that was a tremendous answer by Brian Callahan.
He made up for it, huh?
Mean, I got to give him credit. I had no idea how he was going to answer that question. And I don't know if he knew it was coming or not. Now, I did tweet out the night before that Rand had said that, hey, Rand said the ball didn't bounce their way today. And I have a pretty good idea that the Titans knew I was coming to the press conference. So maybe they said, hey, he's out on Twitter bitching about Rand saying the ball didn't bounce their way, so be prepared for it. If so, good job on their part. But they probably didn't do that. They probably have bigger things to worry about. So on the fly, he doesn't just throw Rand under the bus, but also admits, the good teams make their own bounces. Very well done. Because, again, I'm thinking about, hey, do you believe what your boss said yesterday? And either he says, yes, the ball hasn't bounced our way, and he's going to get killed by everybody. Or he says, no, I don't believe that, and I don't believe what my boss is saying. By the way, he basically said, yeah, no, I don't believe that. When he's like, I believe the good teams actually make their bounces. Just so well done. It's like, why can't you coach that well? Although some of those plays they called to Detroit early in the game, I did think were pretty good. but I got to give credit where credit is due. One texter into the text line, our phone line driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. One texter into the text line says that you've hated Rand since day one. If J-Rob was so great, how come he's not a GM anywhere? Let me answer this. Number one, I did not hate Rand on day one. We had Rand on the show on day one, and my opening take the day after his press conference was, I like him. He seems like a good guy. Now, does that mean he's going to be able to draft players? I don't know. But as far as, I liked Rand at first. Then when I saw him do the job incompetently, I realized, yeah, we got a problem. And because I'm a Titan fan, I'll push back against it harder because I want the Titans to be doing well. And on the John Robinson front, John Robinson's getting paid by the Titans. If John Robinson were to get another job somewhere else, he'd have to work. And whatever he would make from somewhere else would just deduct from what he's making from the Titans. So let me ask you a question. What would you do if you felt like you were screwed by the Titans? Would you shove it to them and take their money, take their millions of dollars? Or would you go out there and go work 19-hour days and bend over backwards, and whatever you make from the new job gets deducted from what you're getting from the guys you want to shove it to? What would you do? That's why. Joey from Bellevue says the ball hasn't bounced our way. How many interceptions have the quarterbacks thrown to the other team? The ball doesn't bounce when it doesn't hit the ground, but I agree with you. If Brinker and Rand are out, Callahan has to go too. The new regime should be able to pick the coach. The Titans have been in a pattern. 1 year fire the GM, the next year fire the coach. See, and that's the unfair part about this. Now, I have somebody that said to me, let Brian Callahan, get a GM that knows football. And let's see. Well, that's great, but does that GM that's going to pick the players, does he want to work with Brian Callahan? Because if he doesn't, well, we've seen how that goes. One texter says there was a game this season where the team, he's talking about the Bears, where a team literally kicked the ball to our team and we still lost. What the hell is Rand talking about? He's just making excuses. And apparently that's his go-to excuse. The ball isn't round. Well, that's great, but maybe if we could stop Khalif Raymond from returning a punt for a touchdown, I think that would be beneficial. 615-737-1025. Trevor is next. Do wonder what Trevor thinks of the Titans now that we've seen them play real teams and now that we see how far off they are. We'll get into that coming up next here on our program. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game. Hey, it's Jared here for Window Nation. Gotta tell you about Window Nation. I absolutely love Window Nation. They are honest people, and they will take great care of you. That I can promise, because they came to my home, and I was ready to write Window Nation a big fat check, and then they said, you don't need to replace your windows. And I said, oh, my God. That's how I knew that was an honest company. Let Window Nation take great care of you. Right now, buy 2 windows and you'll get 2 windows for free. Plus, pay nothing for 24 months. But hurry up because the sale ends October 31st. So schedule an in-home estimate right now by calling 866-90Nation or at windownation.com. Again, buy 2 windows, get 2 free, and pay nothing for 24 months. Sale ends October 31st. 866-90Nation. That's Window Nation at windownation.com. Stillman and company. I know. I've been hard on the Titans for the last 2 days. So let's bring on somebody who has a more positive outlook on life than I do. Trevor Matich, presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics. When experience matters, joins us now in the program. Trev, what can you say about the Tennessee Titans that make these people feel better about their football team after what we saw Sunday? The floor is yours.
Oh my, that's an incredibly tall order. That's like having to follow Taylor Swift in her own concert. That is because it was such a historical meltdown, an epic destruction that the Lions put on the Titans. But it was as much the Titans putting an epic beat down on themselves. And I guess we'll talk about that. But if you want to look at what's positive, the roster has improved. The talent is better. There are still holes in this roster that need to be addressed. But from last year, the talent's better. The problem is that the execution's worse. And so when you look at what happened happened in the Lions game, most of that had to do with execution and poor execution by the Titans in all three phases. For example, on defense, every time the Lions went into motion, it seemed to completely short circuit the brains of the coverage guys, because guy would go in motion pre-snap, someone would follow him over there, somebody else would replace him out the other side, and nobody would cover that new guy. And it was wide open touchdown after wide open touchdown after wide open touchdown pass. All of them short because they had short fields the whole day. But it was just poor execution beyond belief. Part of it also, I think, is that the coaches need to do a better job of putting these guys in a position to succeed, especially in the second half. The fact that the defense struggled so mightily in dealing with the assignment changes when motion happens, that's either the players not paying attention in the meeting or the coaches didn't prepare them for that well enough. Something tells me it's a little bit of both. So these are things that need to be fixed. But all is not lost. This team is not as untalented as their performance suggests, because the execution, whether the fault of the players or the coaches or some combination, the execution is poor. And execution is the thing you can fix without changing personnel.
Trevor, I disagree with you.
All right.
I disagree that this football team is better than they were last year. Derrick Henry was on this football team last year. Derrick Henry is not. And right now, Derrick Henry is number one in almost every single statistical category by a mile. The Titans don't face stacked boxes anymore without Derrick Henry, and that hurts the Titans' ability to throw the ball with a young quarterback. Secondly, I don't think they're better because I don't think Mason Rudolph and Will Levis are better than Ryan Tannehill and Will Levis last year. So if the choice was Levis and Rudolph or Levis and Tannehill, I think you're better off with Levis and Tannehill. Third, Denico Autry sacked the quarterback 11.5 times last year. He's on the Houston Texans. T'Vondre Sweat, through 7 games, does not have a single quarterback hit. How are they a more talented team this year? Just because they spent more money on it doesn't mean it's a better team.
All right, let's go back to front. T'Vondre Sweat, his job is not to make stats. His job is to make piles and to draw double teams. And there have been multiple hits on the quarterback and multiple sacks by other Titans that occurred because they had one-on-one pass protection against them. And Sweat had 2 guys. Those 2 guys stopped him from causing, getting a stat, from pushing the pile, from pressuring the quarterback, or getting a sack himself. But that wasn't his job. His job was to be such a beast that they needed to put 2 guys on him so that Arden Key or Harold Landry or somebody else only had 1 guy on him. So, just the stats for Sweat really don't describe what he's been doing. And he has been doing, he has been affecting games. I think he's been doing a good job. When it comes to
he's fine for a run-stuffing DT, but you don't take that with the 38th pick.
Well, wait now. But other guys are getting to the quarterback because there's no double, they're not being double teamed, because Sweat is being double teamed. Because if you don't double team him, much of the time he's going to push the single guy, guard or center, back into the face of the quarterback. And that's the worst thing that can happen for a quarterback. He has to have some place to step up. He needs space in front of him. And so, you draft a guy that affects the game with that pick. And I believe Sweat affects the game. When it comes to Derrick Henry, he's fantastic. He's, phenomenal, leading the league and all the rest of it. There, you can't say too much about the greatness of Derrick Henry and about how great he's performing now. But Tony Pollard is playing very well. It's not like they have a hole at running back. They don't have anybody that can run the ball. And if Derrick Henry were here, unless he's also covering punts and covering kickoffs and covering receivers when they go into motion on defense, then I'm not sure how much he would affect what the record is right now. So yeah, it's Henry's a great player. Would they be better if they had him? Yeah, probably. But Tony Pollard is good too. And 3 years from now, I anticipate it's more likely that Tony Pollard will still be playing at a high level for the Titans than that Derrick Henry would be playing at that same high level just because of age and things like that. So also you need to look to the future. But yeah, they'd be better if they had Henry here, but I don't think that's the cause of their problems. At quarterback, Tannehill would be the best if he were here, right? He'd be the guy that would be playing right now if he were healthy. But, the quarterback situation is just a rip-roaring mess right now. Will Levis took a step back. Mason Rudolph also took a step back. When he was at the Steelers, his record as a starter was 8-4-1. He played a lot of football and he played it successfully, had a better team around him. And so he comes to the Titans, and I think this Lions game gives you an indication of what's happened to him. His step back is that the timing that was one of the key features when he went into the game that all the announcers on TV talked about how he brings timing to the passing game. Well, he did until he didn't. And for example, he threw an interception against the Lions where he just dropped back to pass, and then he drifted a little bit to his left, and then he hitched a little bit, and then he threw the ball the whole while staring at his receiver in the left curl area. And the defender behind the receiver was going, okay, well, I'll just wait. And then when the ball was starting to be thrown, that defender jumped the route. And it was because there was not good timing. And in this game against the Lions, Mason Rudolph's timing was terrible. He threw the ball late over and over again. It led to turnovers. It led to pass breakups, and it contributed to the loss and to how bad this thing looked. So I agree with you there. The quarterback situation has gotten worse from last year. Has it gotten much less talented? I don't know, but certainly the execution is worse. At receiver, I think the talent is much better, even without DeAndre Hopkins. With the addition of Calvin Ridley and Tyler Boyd, you've got a core bunch of receivers that are better than the core receivers from last year.
But
How's
Trev,
the execution?
if those guys were so good,
passes.
why is Nick Westbrook-Akine the most productive guy?
Right. Well, see, and there's a good question for you. The execution is not good. Those guys are talented. That's what I'm talking about, is the talent has gotten better. The execution has gotten worse. And so if your question, Jared, was, put a little hope up here. And the hope is, the positive side of this is that the team, in terms of the talent of the roster, has improved in key places. Left tackle, massively improved. Center, massively improved. Execution overall has gone down, and that's why this is going on. I mean, you talk about execution, the special teams, were abysmal. As you know, they gave up all those long punt returns and long kickoff return. Part of that was poor coverage. I mean, on the 90-yard punt return for a touchdown, the first two Titans down the field ran past the returner. They weren't blocked there. They just didn't break down until after they were past him. And then he just went right by him and then kept on going up the field. On all of those long returns, the kicks were too far inside. For example, there was a long kickoff return. The ball was kicked to the inside of the numbers. Now, you need to kick it outside the numbers, closer to the sideline, to pin him in there. Instead, it was kicked inside the numbers on the left, and the returner started to the wide side of the field. And all of a sudden, there's fewer guys over there because the cover guys are going down to try to pin him into the sideline. Well, they weren't pinned into the sideline. Same way with those long punt returns. The punt came down inside the numbers, and then the returner took off to the wide side of the field, and guys were trying to squeeze down to pin him, but the ball didn't pin the returner into the sideline. He was closer to the middle of the field than he was to the sideline. So this is execution, and that execution needs to get better. But, I'm not saying this is a good team. I'm not making excuses for them losing. What I'm saying is, as you break it down from an evaluator standpoint, you have to look at three different things. One is, do they have enough players that are good enough to be competitive? I think they do. Number two, are those players executing well? The answer to that is no. Number three, are the coaches putting them in position to where they have the best chance best chance to succeed? And the answer to that too often is no. So that's where I think the state of the Titans is today.
What hope, or I shouldn't say hope, what should Titan fans think about the rest of the season? The GM said the other day that the reason that they're losing is because the ball's not bouncing their way. I don't think Titan fans are stupid enough to believe that. But, Trevor, I'm at the point, I love the Titans. I want them to lose every game. I want the number one pick. If you were to tell Titan fans what they should think about for the rest of the year, what the goal should be, what is it?
You should be looking at individual players and seeing how they perform. They should be looking at the young guys from this draft, not just Sweat and J.C. Latham, but the other guys farther down, and see the degree to which they're contributing in terms of positive plays and then in terms of avoiding big mistakes. They should be looking at the quarterback position to see if it starts to grow now and avoid the big mistakes. You and I have talked a lot about how more games are lost than they are won. And this team is doing a great disservice to their own opportunity to win football games by making massive mistakes in all three phases. So if I'm a fan, I'm looking at individual players and I'm seeing if those guys are now getting better from now game to game to the end of the year. I am also looking from an execution standpoint. Are the Titans limiting the big mistakes that they've been making? If they don't limit those mistakes, then either the players aren't good enough, but I don't think that's true. I think they have enough good players to be far more competitive than they've been. Or the coaches are not adjusting and putting those players in position. And those are two hard, ugly things to say. But that's where this team is right now. So if I'm a fan, that's what I'm looking at. Improvement that starts with avoiding mistakes and then continues on with making plays by players who are in position to make those plays.
Trevor Matich is with us, presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics. When experience matters. Vandy kept it close on Saturday. They did. I want Trevor's thoughts on it next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game. Trevor Matich is presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics, when experience matters. Trevor, I am not one to say that Vanderbilt is above moral victories, though when you beat Alabama, it's kind of hard to top a real victory with a moral victory, and so I'm not going to say this tops it. But I was impressed by Vandy on Saturday against Texas. That felt like a game my entire life, even when James Franklin was the coach, even the year that they, in 2008 when they won the Music City Bowl, that felt like a game where Vandy would go up against a team like Texas at home with all the excitement. They'd score early. It'd be kind of a game. And then by about midway through the third quarter, the blowout would be on. That didn't happen. And I wonder what you thought of the game on Saturday, but what message did you think Vanderbilt sent in a very close game against a very good Texas team?
Vanderbilt has resilience. That Vanderbilt adds skill to that resilience, that this is not your Vanderbilt team of recent years that is basically incapable of playing well even when the other side doesn't play well itself. Texas, coming off of that physical loss to Georgia, might have been in place for a letdown here, right? You would think they kind of might have been, but they also saw that Vandy beat Alabama. So Texas was not going to overlook Vanderbilt, especially with Diego Pavia at quarterback and his ability to make plays. Well, Texas was in control. At the end of the first half, Texas was up 21-10, but that Vandy outscored them 14-6 in the second half, ended up only losing the game. Vandy did 27-24. And Texas didn't score a touchdown in the second half. They tried mightily because Vandy was coming back. Vandy scored a touchdown in the third quarter. Vandy was moving the ball. Vandy scored a touchdown at the end of the game. And then they had a chance to get an onside kick to maybe do something else, maybe tie it up and send it to overtime. But Texas did not take their foot off the gas in the second half. Vandy came roaring back and hit Texas in the mouth in the second half. And that, to me, is the biggest statement of all that they made. Because you're right, in the past, they'd hang tough sometimes in the first half with the better teams. And then in the second half, the better teams, their talent and their size and their speed would just take over and they'd run away with the game. The opposite happened here. Texas got a lead at halftime. And in the end, in the second half, when Texas was supposed to run away with it, Vandy is the one who dominated the second half. They just came up a tiny bit short. And I'll tell you, this is a different Vanderbilt team. And it's not just because they're plucky and they fought hard. It's because they're good. I mean, they're good. Their defense, Diego Pavia doesn't play defense. Their defense shut Texas out of the end zone the entire second half. And that, to me, says a whole lot about this team.
Trevor, do you think that Vanderbilt, the rest of the way, it's still a loaded schedule? Do you think they could still knock off an LSU or a Tennessee? Obviously, LSU ended up, I think, folding in the second half against A&M. And then Tennessee, with Nico, it's been very up and down this year. Do you think they could compete against them?
Well, it's possible. I don't know that they'll be favored in any of their remaining games. They might be against Auburn. They might be against South Carolina. We'll see. But for Vanderbilt, they might be able to knock off LSU. Problem is, it's at LSU. That's a tough order, a tall order. But LSU, where they're strong is in the passing game and at rushing the passer. They're very good at creating havoc behind the line. And Garrett Nussmeier is an NFL quarterback. But their secondary is vulnerable. And with a guy like Diego Pavia, who's so good at converting third downs, he will find places that he'll be able to exploit to play keep away against LSU the way he played keep away against Alabama. So it's not out of the question. And you're right about Tennessee, because Nico, when he's hitting the deep pass, Tennessee is as close to unstoppable as any team in college football. But he's been up and down, mostly down on hitting the deep pass in recent weeks. And so we'll see what happens there. The key for Vandy is this. They're 5-3 now. They need one more win to become bowl eligible. That's the big key. The most likely games that they have a chance to win are either at Auburn in their next game or South Carolina. But if they are able to get a win in at least one of those games, then Vandy goes bowling. They get a couple of weeks of bowl practice. They'll be able to point to recruits the progress that they're making, and those recruits can come in and can continue to build Vandy up to a place that it hasn't been for a long, long time. That's a powerful argument to recruits rather than just say, come on in and the best you can do is not fail to uphold the standard that other guys had before you. They could say you could be a hero at Vanderbilt. And look, we are showing you now the fruit is on the tree. We are on the upswing, and you can be a part of that. You can be a hero of that. Making a bowl game, winning it is even better, but at least making it is a big step towards that.
Trevor, last one for you. It feels like the consensus is Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward as the top two quarterbacks coming out this season. Is it as simple as that?
It's pretty close because some of the other quarterbacks that were considered to be the top prospects have shown some real flaws. Carson Beck of Georgia has been spotty with his accuracy and has been terrible both when he's under pressure in the pocket and then when he is out of the pocket in terms of his efficiency and his QBR. Quinn Ewers, same way. When he has been outside the pocket or when he's been pressured, his effectiveness as a passer, that's the Texas quarterback, has dropped more dramatically than it should have. And plus, Ewers has the health issues. Garrett Nussmeier is one of those guys I think that you could consider as a first-round draft choice. I love Nussmeier. I mean, I love Nussmeier, although he had an epic meltdown in the second half against Texas A&M. So now maybe we need to reevaluate that. But when you put all that stuff together, when you talk about the guys at the very top, you're talking about Shedeur, you're talking about Cam.
Trevor Matich, presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics, where experience matters. Great stuff, Trev.
Thanks, Jared.
Yep. Barry Trotz joins us next. Last week, Barry was fired up with the 0-5 Predators. Now they are 3-5-1. Trotz joins us next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063, the game streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Let me say this about the early part of the hockey season. It's like the Hippocratic Oath. This is my message when it comes to the early part of an NHL season. Do no harm. That's all I ask. Being the best team in the league in October means nothing. It doesn't mean anything to me. I don't care who the best team in October and November is. I care about who's the best team, when we start to get a little bit later throughout the course of the year. But you got to do no harm, because even though there's a story of the 2019 St. Louis Blues, the reality is teams that are in playoff spots on U.S. Thanksgiving are infinitely more likely to make it to the playoffs than the teams that are not. So I always look at it and say, okay, teams take a while to gel, and then once we decide who's good and who's not, there's going to be the trade deadline, and some teams are going to go all in, and some teams are going to go all out, and at some point, the hockey season will kind of develop along its own pace, somewhere around January, February, something like that. You're going to lose some games early on that you don't really know why you lost them, and you're probably going to beat some teams that you don't expect to, but again, just do no harm. Figure your own game out. Figure it, whatever. And then the Predators started off 0-5. And I'm not going to lie to you. I got a little worried. But I did see the schedule. Boston, that could be a little tough. Chicago, Columbus, they should win. None of these, Boston, they dominated. Chicago, that was a hold on to your ass kind of game. Columbus, even more. And then last night. Last night, they came out, did not play their best hockey at the beginning, came back in the game, had a shot to win it, lost in overtime, picked up the point. 3-5-1, it's not the end of the world. Most teams are around 4-4-1. Barry Trotz joins us now on the program, presented by Pourvu, as he always does on a Tuesday. And again, Pourvu, that is your spot. Be ready when the puck drops in Smashville with your drink of choice in hand. Their fearless leader has a passion for bourbon, especially hard to find and small batch. He takes road trips to hand-select barrels himself. Visit Pourvu for their exceptional variety in the bourbon and whiskey section. Barry Trotz joins us. Barry, all right, 3-5-1. Last week it was 0-5-0. How much better do you feel about things today than you did last week?
Well, I feel about 7 points better. I would say that what we're finding out about our hockey team is that we have some resiliency. We got some pride. I agree with your assessment in the Chicago game. The Columbus game was tough because they were fresh. We were playing back-to-back and playing our backup goaltender who didn't have his first start wasn't his best. And we started both games down 2-0 in both games, and we found a way to come back and win those games. So that is tough mentally, and that's tough physically to do. So I would say that is growth for our team. If you look at Chicago, they went and walked into Colorado last night and beat them 5-2. So Chicago's a much better team. Columbus is a much better team. They just destroyed Edmonton 6-1 yesterday. So those teams are better than maybe you think. And Tampa last night was a little bit of a slow start. Tampa, talking to their management team, they felt that was their strongest game of the year. There was an emotional game, and we did the same thing. We were down 2 pucks. We came out with an overtime loss. But I thought for the most part, this has been a good week for us, a necessary week, and something that hopefully we can build on. We're back, we put ourselves back in a position to, if we have another good week, or if we, can take 2 out of 3 games in the next couple of weeks, we'll be right in the mix and where we want to be.
Do you feel like now that you've got a couple of victories under your belt? Because I still see, some line changing, and last night it was kind of on defense where Yossi's up with, where Brady Shea and Fabro are together, and I think it was it Shen that was up with Yossi last? I mean, it's just a different kind of change that now this team can kind of take a little bit of the pressure off and really find out what combinations are best for this team.
Yeah, I think you're seeing that. I think what's happened too a little bit, and I talk about obviously when I coach, there's times when you want to get those combinations and find, and you push for them, and they're just not coming the way you want. I think in Bruno's mind, we talked about maybe a Shea Yossi pair that might be really good. And then you go Lazon Carrier and then Shen and either Fabro or Delgado and Shen or Delgado and Fabro, something like that. But the slow start by probably not only Roman but also Brady Shea probably has not been solidifying that pair. So he's moving it around, and we're finding out that. Based on Yosa's game and Brady's game, that having a partner who's probably just steady is the best word, predictable, steady, whatever you want to say. It's worked to stabilize their game, and I think that's caused some, a lot of those changes.
To that point, when it comes to kind of everybody gelling together, or the right combination, or the right. O'Reilly had the power play goal last night, and I watched the team on the power play, and I feel like it's a click or half a click slower than it should be in terms of getting the puck to one another, guys making decisions on shots, getting the puck on the tape, and this is just my opinion. I mean, I don't, what do I know? But yeah. I feel like the quicker things pick up with this group, the quicker and more often we'll see kind of those one-timers for Stamkos that he's made a Hall of Fame career out of, and that they will come more in the bunches there. Do you feel like the power play, that the guys are still figuring each other out at this point as to why it is, again, to my point, like maybe a click or two below my expectation right now?
Yeah, absolutely, because you're looking at the talent pool that's on the ice, the 5 players. You're thinking that it should click, it should be automatic, and it hasn't been. It hasn't been up to the expectations of myself, probably Bruno, and also the players that are on that. I think they look at it and they go, this is a good group. And I saw a lot of deferring to Stamkos, trying to get the puck to Stamkos. And what I'm starting to see, we had a couple power plays yesterday where we looked really dangerous. We looked like we were starting to come together. And the reason I think there was glimpses of it is that Philip Forsberg knows that, I'm as good a scorer as Stamkos. Stamkos knows he's as good a scorer as Forsberg. Marchessault can score and make plays, and same with Stamkos. And then you got Yost, and you got Factor at the net who can do some of the net front and some of that middle stuff, and also in that real important bumper spot sometimes where you got to retrieve and keep things alive. And they got really dangerous, and they're starting to respect each other's skill. Whatever's open, take whatever's open. Let's not defer and try to get it over to Stammer for a one-timer. Let's not try to be as predictable. Let's just play hockey and take what they give us, because they're very intelligent players. And you saw glimpses of that. So hopefully seeing a glimpse, that glimpse turns into something that's more consistent. And then hopefully, that consistency turns a group of 5 into a really good power play. So, to this point, the power play has scored some big goals for us, but you expect a little bit more. Penalty kill has been, I think, been a game changer for us. And then goaltending, obviously, we've gotten good goaltending, and goaltending is one of those things that can give you a lot of confidence. So, all that being said, if we can, but the one area that I think we have to be much better at is our 5-on-5 play. Getting more goals. I think we've been outscored probably by, I think we're -9 5-on-5. They'll have to looked that stat up, but I know we're on the bottom end of the 5-on-5. That's to me, that's once we get that dialed in, the special teams and the goaltending and the rest of our game will come about, and will be a lot harder out night in and night out.
Barry Trotz is with us, presented by Porvu. I remember when you got the job and you came on the show and we were talking about Saros, and you said that when you coached against the Predators but didn't see him every night, you knew he was a good goalie. But then that kind of half a season where you were, in the mix with David on his way out and you on your way in, you kind of grew respect for him about being the guy. You gave him the big contract. I said to you on Tuesday, I said, at some point, the goalie has got to carry this team, and steal some victories and win a playoff series. And then he goes and pitches a shutout Tuesday night in the game that it really felt like you had to have this season that early. And he ends up, stopping Boston. He's been fantastic. And even last night, I thought Saros was fabulous last night. What does that tell you about the fact that we were talking a week ago about, hey, can he live up to what a franchise goalie does? And then in the week since then has done all of that. How much confidence does that give you in him?
Yeah, it just, what it does is it re-energizes my belief in that. I never had any doubts. I just knew that he was going to come around, and I was hoping they would come around sooner rather than later, because that was the one area and the one position where you. And I said this to one of the media people in Tampa. They were asking me about goaltending, and I sometimes I come up with these crazy analogies, but to me, goaltending, if you don't have, they were talking about teams that don't have goaltending. It's like having a sweater, and you pull on a string on a sweater, and the hole gets bigger and bigger, and that hole takes away your confidence. It takes away your 5-on-5 game. It takes away your trust. And it takes away your ability to win games and go on runs as a group, and and go into a real good positive streak. So to me, having goaltending allows you to do the opposite. It puts everything back together. It gives you your trust. It gives you your belief. It gives you the confidence, and then you're able to put some games back to back together and start marching forward.
Barry, what have you thought of Zachary Leroux since he's entered the lineup?
He's been good. He's still earning the trust of Bruno. I think when he first came into the Bruin game, he gave us a little bump of energy and that little bit of grit and spit that you need to give that fourth line a little bit more identity. I think he's done that, and I think he's pretty reliable defensively, which is a real benefit because that allows Bruno to play that our sort of identity line. I shouldn't even call him the fourth line, the identity line against shifts against some top people. So I think he's done a really good job. He wasn't going to be the savior. He's just a young player coming in and adjusting to the National Hockey League, and I think he's done a really good job so far.
Barry Trotz is with us, presented by Porvu. According to, I saw some stuff on Twitter about Spencer Stastny out playing some pickup hockey or whatever it may be. And again, I don't know what's true on Twitter and what's not anymore anyways. But I do ask this. Do we have an update as to what's up with Stastny? Because defensively, it does kind of feel like he's a piece that could really help this team out right now. And I guess, we're probably out here looking for clarity as to if he's coming back, when he's coming back, and how he could help the team.
Yeah, no, we don't have any clarity. He's dealing with some things that have really no time frame, and he's working with people on that, and therefore, I wish I did have some clarity. It would ease my mind, and I've been as transparent as anybody with our fans and with yourself. I don't have a time frame, but it is encouraging to see, even if he's out in pickup hockey, that he's out on the ice and starting to do some things that are going to hopefully help him get back to a position with us at some point.
How do you feel about your defense as a whole right now?
Our team defense, or a group of six? or 7.
I'm gonna say right now the whole defense, the entire team, including the forwards.
I think our defense is a work in progress. It's not, to me, it's not quite locked down. I think 2 things. We down low, we had some early problems with lack of communication and duplication. That is part and parcel, some new combinations, if you will. Some of that is just not being sharp and trusting in what we're doing. And then you can take a lot of that trust or create a lot of that trust with a little bit more communication, especially what we call is with the pressure points. There's certain times that there's a low forward and a D, and they want to put pressure on the puck because we want the puck back as soon as we can in the defensive zone. And there's sometimes some duplication and sometimes momentum that forward can go in first and get some skin on the opposition, get him pinned a little bit, and the D will come in, and then vice versa. There's times where I thought early we were both going at the same time and not having layers of resistance, which gives you good team defense. And they were hitting some pockets in that in the middle of the ice too easily. And then also just awareness of some of our offside winger who was maybe leaving too soon or having danger awareness. This game isn't perfect, and that's why the goals are scored. So there's moments of imperfection in terms of your defensive zone play, and you need other people to recognize danger and cover up those spots to give you more layers of resistance in the defensive zone. So that is starting to come a little bit. And then our puck management early was not good. It's starting to come and be a little bit better. And then our execution, which allows you to play fast, continues to be a work in progress. So we got lots of building to do, but as we're building along here, we're finding ways to win, and that's what you need in this game. We were finding ways to lose early. Now we're finding ways to win. So you always try to look at the positive in those situations, because this league is hard. There isn't an easy out in this league. Even though you think it is, there is not an easy out in the National Hockey League.
How bad did you want Stamkos to win it last night in overtime?
A lot. But you know what? I went in there. I knew Tampa would be revved up. They had fans that were revved up. They're Tampa. Tampa's a proud team too, and all the guys love Stammer. They're great friends, but at the same time, they got a new teammate in Getzel, and they're also going. We're not just Steven Stamkos is not the only reason that we won. We are a good team. We won cups. This core group, and so they were not going to let us leave there easily, and they didn't. They had one of their best games of the year, and we still got 36 shots. I thought there's times when we had them looking pretty average. There was times they had us looking pretty average, but it was generally that one line that they had with Kucherov and Point, who are they're difference makers, and Kucherov is unbelievable player, what he can do with the puck. So I thought we did a pretty good job of limiting them. But when we did give them an opportunity, they were extremely dangerous, and that's where we had the human eraser and Juice. He took away a lot of their opportunities.
Last one for you. Barry Trotz is with us on the program presented by Port Vu. McDavid will not be playing on Thursday against Edmonton. We saw McDavid make a McDavid-like play that was the game winner when they were here just a couple of weeks ago. I have to ask this question. Is there almost around the team kind of a discussion like, hey, just because McDavid's not in the lineup doesn't mean that Edmonton is still not incredibly dangerous? Because he is the headliner wherever they go, and he will not be in there on Thursday, which should be a good thing. But then I'd worry a little bit that everybody else will think it's a good thing.
Well, I think everybody, if you're a defenseman on our team, or even a forward, you're having McDavid not in the lineup. You're going, hey, that's one less thing we have to worry about. But I do know this, that when you have your top player not have his best, you're going to have everybody else crank their game up, 5%, whatever it is. You've seen it in the past when McDavid has been hurt. Draisaitl takes his game to, into the stratosphere in terms of carrying their team. I'm sure a guy like Zach Hyman, who's been a big part of their team, he will have his best game. Matthias Ekholm's going to come back and he's going to have his best game. Their goalie, well, you rally around sometimes losing your top player because you're so used to those guys carrying the load. Now you all have to get your hands on the rope and you go, hey, we have to do this together because we want to stay in the fight. So sometimes it can become a bonding effect. On our side, we've got to still know that they're dangerous, and they are. They still got lots of high end guys, and they did go to the finals last year, and that team is pretty well the same team with a couple of ads and guys like Arby and Skinner.
Barry Trotz, presented by Portvue. Barry, great stuff. Congratulations on the week that, trust me, you guys needed. And I know you knew that y'all needed, but you got it. And good luck on Thursday.
Thank you.
Yep, Barry Trotz on the program, as always. 615-737-1025 here on our program. Stillman and Company, 1025 The Game. Got to tell you about Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Proud supporters of the Nashville Predators. Let me get that out there. It is spooky season, and everyone is thinking about Halloween. And this month, it's all treats and no tricks with my friends at Hiller. During their spooky good fall giveaway, get a free Blackstone griddle, solo stove, or Yeti Tundra cooler with select home upgrades, or enjoy $99 specials like an HVAC tune-up. Visit happyhiller.com for all the details. Again, Hiller takes great care of my home. I promise you they will do the same for you, and you can see that Hiller logo right there on the ice Thursday night at Bridgestone Arena. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, proud supporters of the Preds, Vols, and Vandy. Hiller, call the Happy Face Truck today.
Steven Stamkos the best chance so far, then one for Kucherov. Paul down low, can't hit Gensel. Saros the active stick to bat the pass away. Puck trickling high in the Pred zone, and Gensel keeps it. Gensel down low, and Paul scores. Roman Josi slams his stick into the backboards in frustration. Lightning win in overtime, 3-2, with 1:38 left in OT.
Is it bad that I hear that cut last night and I'm like, man, Max called a pretty good game last night, huh? Because obviously I didn't listen. I was watching on ESPN Plus last night, but that's a pretty good call right there from old Maxie. I got to tell you, he's growing up. He's bringing a tear to my eye. All right, let's go to some quick phones after Barry Trotz was on the program. One texter says, why is it that the Predators are playing so poorly in the first period, but then play with their hair on fire in the second and the third period? That's a really good question. If they played that, I thought they were super sloppy to begin the game last night. I kind of got nervous last night in the first period because I heard Willie say that if they play the way they play against Chicago or Columbus, they'll lose to Tampa. And then it felt like they played the way they were playing against Chicago and Columbus against Tampa last night. And that made me a little nervous, however you want to put that. Another text says defense is giving up too many odd man rushes. I think Barry said right now they're trying to kind of figure out how to rotate it in and back and forth and whatnot. As far as the defense is concerned, I was a little surprised by that. I'm a little surprised by this Spencer Stastny playing pickup hockey thing, but we don't know anything about him. We don't have a timetable on that. That is fascinating as far as, I guess, that can be, but I don't know. I will tell you this. I am tired of watching Dante Fabro play for the Predators. Like, I asked Barry, I said, how do you feel about your defense, but your defense as a whole? And, he's moving the guys around and Fabro's not bad, but I'm tired of watching him play. Like, I used to call him the Traylon Burks of the Predators because it's like he got here with so much promise and hasn't improved at all. Now, I don't think it's as fair to call him Burks because Burks is never healthy and he's like truly worthless. But Fabro, Ian, I'm tired of watching Fabro play for the Predators. I want him on somebody else's team.
Yeah, I guess it's just when you're a first round pick and kind of seemed like expectations were a little high in college and coming in, he looked good right out the gate and he hasn't really looked like he maybe progressed or taken that step that you would like. So I see where it's frustrating, but
so our text line always does this every time Barry Trotz comes on the program. The Titans front office needs to listen to the Barry Trotz interviews. The good, the bad, the ugly. He always communicates well, and I feel like I'm in the room with him. That comes from Shay. Another texter said, it was good hearing Barry. I guess we should expect Rand Carthon and you at his usual 5:30 Tuesday slot because I'd pay to hear that, says the texter. I haven't asked for Rand Carthon to come on the show. I doubt he would have any interest in coming on this program. But I will say this. I don't think it's fair to pile on the Titans because the Predators general manager does interviews and tells it like it is. Certainly don't think that it's a good look, but I'm not going to. But Rand's interviews, as few and far between as they come, are so bad. And I have got to get on my buddy, D. Mace, who's trying to tell us that Rand, in another horrible interview, told us something that I am telling you he did not say. We'll get to that coming up next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game. that when reflecting on the first 7 games, that the ball just hasn't bounced the team's way this year. Do you believe that?
There's moments where it feels like that, but there's also a part of football where you have to make your own luck to some degree too. You got to those things that feel like luck and feel like the bounces go your way or don't go your way. Part of that is making it happen for yourself too. We've also given away a lot, and that's there's moments where it feels like there's like 3 plays a game where it's like, what in the world is happening right now? Like, how does this even happen? But there's a part of the ball bouncing your way. Like, good teams have to kind of just goes your way sometimes. The ball, they end up with the ball, they make plays on the ball. There's a momentum factor that it's hard to like pinpoint what that is. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely times where it's felt that way. But again, I'm more in the line of you sort of have to create those opportunities and you have to make your luck a bit too in this league. And we've not done a good enough job of it.
You have to make your luck, Brian Callahan says. That's not what his boss says. Rand Carthon in the Tennessean. Question, looking at what happened in the first 7 games and building for the last 10, what do you expect from the season? Having seen what you've seen, answer, quote, I expect our guys to continue to play hard, which is what they do. The ball's not round. You don't know which way it's going to bounce sometimes. It's those couple of opportunities that we've had in the game where we jar the ball loose, but it bounces right back to them. And then on the other side of us, it gets away from us, so you can't predict which way the ball bounces. But one thing I know about our team is those guys show up every day at practice. They prepare, and they come out and fight. So we've got to continue to fight until the ball bounces our way. When I saw that on Sunday, I thought, oh, God, no, the ball didn't bounce our way. Insulting. Again, if I own the team, I said this yesterday, if I own the team and I read that knowing I'm asking people to pay thousands and thousands of dollars for PSLs, I would have fired Rand Carthon because it's insulting to the fans to say, oh, the ball's not bouncing our way. It's insulting enough to say it the first time. But this is the second time he said it. In fact, he said it, Ian, if you could, he said it after Mike Vrabel got fired. They fired the coach because it wasn't good enough. And he said after they fired Vrabel, it's because the ball didn't bounce their way.
Rand, you said when at the draft or when you were introduced that your number one thing was to serve Mike. Given today's developments, did you fail at that?
I don't think we failed. I just think, one of the things Mike's always says is that the ball isn't round, so you don't know how it's going to bounce. And I don't think the ball bounced our way. We had 7 one-score losses this year, so we were in games. Just the ball didn't bounce our way. I wouldn't consider it a failure, but by no means, were we happy with the results. And that's just something we've talked about, privately and as a group over the last couple months of, how do we get this thing right and how do we get this thing, in the right direction. So I wouldn't call it a failure, but it's definitely not up to the standard.
Okay. So again, he used that last year. Now he's using it. It's the ball bouncing their way. 7 one-score games. Ball didn't bounce our way. D Mace today, and I love D Mace with all my heart, but we're calling the midday show the Rand Club with Willie and Derek, Adam Vingan moderating the Rand Club. Here's what Derek said about those egregious and insulting comments.
He doesn't mean the ball literally, like the ball didn't bounce our way. That's not what he meant, okay? Just understand. I want y'all to understand that first before we even dive into anything else. Understand that when he says, and maybe it was the wrong wording, but me as a football guy, I know exactly what he means. And if I, as a football guy, am telling y'all what he exactly means, then that's what it's, hey, listen, the ball didn't bounce our way. It didn't mean, okay, we fumbled the ball and it went to Detroit instead of us. No, that's not what he means. Or we threw the ball and it went to Detroit instead of one of our guys. That's not what he means. He just means things.
That's so Derek's saying that's not what he means. Except he said it's those couple of opportunities we had in the game where we jar the ball loose and it bounces right back to them. And then on the other side of us, it gets away from us. He's literally saying that it's the ball. Like he said, Derek's like, he doesn't mean that when they fumble the ball, it doesn't go to Detroit. That's not what that's exactly, he said literally, He's like, he's pointing out, he's clarifying. This is actually what I meant by this. Like, Derek's like, look, I'm a football guy. You guys don't understand. When he says the ball didn't bounce our way, he's not really saying it's the physical ball. He's just saying things didn't work. No, I mean, again, when he says we jar the ball loose, but it bounces right back to them, and then on the other side of us, it gets away from us, so you can't predict which way the ball bounces. He's talking about the ball. Like, he's talking about the ball. When he says, hey, we were in 7 one-score games, so the ball didn't bounce our way, he's talking about the ball. When you reference 7 one-score games, you're talking about, again, in sports, the difference between winning and losing, it's a razor-thin margin. Now, I'm not actually talking about a razor, but again, they're razor-thin margins. So I understand, for instance, last night, Stamkos has an opportunity for the Predators to win the game, and it just couldn't get in the net. That's a bounce of the puck. Like, again, the difference between Edmonton and Florida last year in Game 7 of the Cup final, the puck did not bounce Edmonton's way on that last onslaught of, gosh, Ian, I almost said Luongo, Bobrovsky.
Mm-hmm.
The last just, they were firing puck. That's bouncing your way. Like the ball that hits the chalk in a baseball game. That's the ball bouncing your way. In this case, he's talking about the ball. Like, I don't understand. And D. Mace is like, look, I understand football. You guys don't. So what he really means is, I'm pretty sure he means the ball. Like, he means the ball. Again, I understand the idea of not getting the breaks. I understand that, hey, you can go out there, play the best that you could have played, and the referee threw the wrong flag at the wrong time, and like the New Orleans Saints got screwed when they lost to the Rams in the playoffs that one year. You can say, hey, the ball didn't bounce our way. You can't say that when you lose by 38 points. And then you can't say that he didn't really mean that when he clarifies in his statement what he means. Let's play the rest of what D-Mace had to say.
That's not what he means. He just means things like we're close in games, but we're not good enough. Basically, that's what he's saying. We are not good enough. He can't say we are not good enough, okay? Even John Robinson didn't say the bottom half of my roster is not good. What John did was try to sell you on, we got some good players, and we believe we drafted some good players. So when Rand Carthon, listen to me very closely, people. When Rand Carthon says the ball didn't bounce our way, what he's really saying is we're not good enough to make the mistakes that we're making and overcome them. That's all he's saying. And we have smart listeners. So listen through the words and see what he's actually saying.
Yeah, I mean, I'm reading the words right now, and I know exactly what he's actually saying. He's actually saying, hey, if the ball had bounced our way, we would have won on Sunday. And that's just not true. And everybody knows it. Again, I don't. It's those couple of opportunities we had in the game where we jar the ball loose, but it bounces right back to them. And then on the other side, it gets away from us. So you can't predict which way the ball's going to bounce. He's talking about the ball. D-Mace. I got to tell you, I love you with all my heart. And I think you're a smart guy. And by the way, I was thinking about saving this one up until 9:30 on Sunday, but I got a feeling me, D-Mace, Chris, we're going to have a big discussion on the award-winning pregame show on Sunday. But you can't tell the listeners, like, hey, listeners, you're smart. What he said is actually not what he said, when in fact, it's exactly what he said. It's, I mean, I love you, D-Mace. 615-737-1025, Stillman and Company, 1025 The Game.
How patient has Amy been through this process as you guys go through these struggles?
Yeah, look, none of us are that patient, you know. And again, any conversation with her, I'll leave between us. But at the end of the day, you know, we communicate, we speak, we talk. All of us, you know, between Rand and Chad and myself and Amy, we have the conversations that we need to have. We lay it out. There's no sugarcoating anything, and we know what the plan is and where we're headed and how we're going to get there. But yeah, those things are it's all part of it, you know. And it's all you're only as patient as you know what it's the NFL. There's not a lot of patience anywhere in the NFL, and we got to find a way to get better.
That was Brian Callahan yesterday saying, hey, we don't sugarcoat things, even though, you know, they say the ball didn't bounce their way. But other than that, he said, we don't sugarcoat things, me and Amy and Rand and Chad. And well, okay. Our final poll numbers are in. I believe it was a 24-hour vote process. Who would be better as GM of the Titans? Ian, we put up a valiant effort.
Oh.
Rand Carthon and Chad Brinker, 51% of the vote. Jared Stillman, 49% of the vote.
So close.
Oh, boy. I tell you, it's one thing for Ozzie Guillen, who's won a World Series as manager of the White Sox, to sit there on the White Sox postgame show and say, I could manage the team better than this guy. It is another thing for 49% of the people to say, yeah, let's give Jared a try. Because even though he's never worked in football a day in his life, it can't be worse than it is now. They can't be worse than what it is now. I mean, I'm sorry, that's where it is. And I hope, again, I don't know, I don't think Amy makes decisions based upon, a lot of people are talking about, well, they're too cheap to fire this guy or that. I'm like, I mean, they paid to fire Mike Vrabel, so I think that they're willing to eat the money. I'm going to give them that. I don't think they're too cheap on this stuff. But if Amy's sitting there saying, hey, if anything that she said about having high standards is remotely true, somebody needs to tell her. They ran a poll, 1,200 people voted in the poll, and 49% of the people think Jared Stillman would be a better general manager than the people that you have right now running your team. Can you imagine telling the owner that? 49% of your fan base. And I understand if you listen to the fans, pretty soon you're sitting with them, and sometimes owners and GMs and coaches have to make decisions that are not popular with fan bases. Josh Heupel was not a popular hire at Tennessee. I got it. But it is another thing when it's 49% of the people, nobody, when it's hey, who do you think would be a better head coach for the Vols? Josh Heupel or Jimmy Himes? 49% of the people say the radio guy. You got to be there. That's kind of ridiculous. And look, I'm not saying I should be a GM of a football team. I do think I'd be better than these guys. I really believe that. And I think it's because, again, I have some common sense and I'd hire some people to work for me and with me that would be, very experienced, very smart, that kind of stuff. And they've hired buddies who they played grab ass with and the owner's son-in-law, I guess. I don't know. Speaking of which, the World Series is coming on next. As a Braves fan, I got to tell you, I'm happy for Freddie Freeman and the Dodgers are going to win the World Series, and I'm happy. But it is a kick in the crotch, the same way watching Derrick Henry perform like Derrick Henry for the Ravens is a kick in the crotch. And I was so happy for Freddie Freeman when he hit that home run the other day. And yet, part of me feels like watching him win World Series MVP tonight is going to be a kick in the crotch. Just like watching Derrick Henry win Super Bowl MVP would be a kick in the crotch. But that's what we have. Baseball is next. Enjoy. Stillman and Company. We'll see everybody tomorrow, too.